Kristi, give me who's your favorite optimal-ish stack and give me something off the wall.
Yeah, I would say for optimal, looking at that, kind of looking at that Dallas game there, I would say that's probably more optimal, like that game environment a lot. But probably my favorite stack, and I forgot to mention this guy for receiver, but I love Burrow. I love the Cincinnati Green Bay game. Jamar Chase, probably one of my favorite plays too. Forgot to mention him, but that's probably one of my favorite GPP stacks on the slate. I think, the chalk is going to condense for cash plays, Madison and Henry. They're great plays. Madison, he's just going to get the ball a ton. It's a great matchup for him. So I like those plays a lot, but I think there's going to be a ton of ways to get a little bit contrarian for running back. I'll also mention Damian Williams in particular on Fanduel. He's priced so low. So I think he makes a good cash play over there as well. At 5,800, just way too cheap. For some value plays, I think Tony for the Giants, I think he's going to carry some ownership. He's priced pretty cheap. Mike Gesicki, we talked about Parker being out. I think there's even some more targets available for him in that game.
Morning, Rotogrinders. Welcome to Week 6 NFL DFS. It's 10:32, kind of a few minutes late here on the start. 10:32 on the East Coast, 7:32 on the West Coast, and 9:32 Tennessee time. So, of course, I'm just having the flagship show here at Rotogrinders. It's called Grinderslive. Joining me today, get it. We have somebody I called up from the bullpen, Blender. It's going to make for a different show. Grant is having some issues, technical issues, so we'll be talking to him Monday night or later on in the week. But unfortunately for Grant, he's not going to be on the show. But Blender, thank you for stepping up and welcome to the show. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a good conversation.
Play whoever you want. I'm done, right? I can leave now, right?
That's it. Just get that on a t-shirt. Every time somebody says that, you get like $27 or something like that. And there you go. That's it. Is that simple? Also, you got to say it's lineups, not players.
Yes. Well, it's all I'm building my lineups now. That's what I'm doing in the morning. I'm making the donuts.
What, you haven't officially locked in your lineups? You're still kind of tinkering?
No, we still got 8 actives. Who knows? Maybe Tyreek Hill doesn't even play today. We don't know.
Oh, he better play because I have a lot of stuff saved, and I'm not really good at making like mass swaps and all that kind of stuff on Yahoo. I mass entered. Well, I put 149 lineups in that Yahoo contest today. I did check.
You couldn't get the last one in. What was
wrong with I use all the time. 149 lineups.
I like to exercise bankroll management, and also I like odd numbers. So and maybe there's one more lineup that kind of comes to me organically in the last hour and a half or so, and I'll throw one in there. We should mention, let's go ahead and check that out because they are kind of sponsoring the show. And if you guys are not in Yahoo for whatever reason, use the promo code Grinders25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. They have big contests now for the single entry slates as well. Monday night, Thursday night, Sunday night. Of course, we're doing shows for that. Also, Blender, I believe you're on at least one of those nights, about 2 of those nights. $150,000 Yahoo Cup is going on as well. Yeah, so their main contest is it's $1 million contest, $150K guaranteed overlay. If it sells out, and as of right now, it's only about 75% full. 33,000 spots have been claimed out of 42,000 spots. It says if it sells out, there's $150,000 in overlay. So an absolutely fabulous contest. I'm in for 149. Blender, you got to be playing that contest today, right?
Unfortunately, no, because don't get me started on Yahoo's interface.
Okay, fair enough.
I would if it. I mean, I'm playing on multiple sites, and once uploading on Yahoo, not the best. I mean, probably not good to say that when they're sponsoring, but if you're playing a couple of lineups, maybe that's what I should be doing. I should be playing like maybe 20 or something. But I've tried to play 150 and it is quite untenable. So that's actually good for like lower stakes people because a lot of the MME players don't necessarily like the Yahoo interface that much. So you're less likely to get as many 150 maxers in them.
You like paying rake. I mean, some people like paying rake, some people don't.
I love playing. I want to pay as much rake as possible. Please raise the rake.
The only person with the raise the rake, the rake is too damn low. Andre, what's going on? How are things in your world? Are you playing this Yahoo contest, or do you also like paying rake?
Nah, I like paying the rake a lot.
All right.
All year today's hard, but hopefully today I'll make up for it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and it's also a flat payout, which I love that. I don't like playing the contest at like 2.5 million as far as their prize pool and $1 million up top. It's $1 million as far as the prize pool. In first place, I believe, is it 100,000? I want to say it's 100,000 for first, which is 10%, which is beautiful. And you also get a live final seat too, which is nice. There you go. Yeah, against my best interest to tell people to play it, but I think that's the first place you should be playing if you're playing just like $60. Play 3 lineups in that contest. All right, it's a different kind of slate here, Blender, because we just have 10 games. There's a Miami Dolphin, Jacksonville Jaguar NFL football game going on right now in London. There's the Sunday night game, there's the Monday night game, there's bye weeks. We just have 10 games. It's a condensed player pool this week. Whatever 10% ownership is on a 13 or 14 game slate, it's different on a 10 game slate. And then of course we'll have the conversation as far as Kareem Hunt too. We're seeing him popping at about like 45 to 50% as far as our projections, which is just an insane number. Just because, there's no Chubb and there's a plethora of running backs, which we'll talk about. There's a lot of good pivots away from him. And he's actually not necessarily healthy either, which is somewhat concerning. It's one of only 3 late games too, that Cleveland game, which is kind of somewhat interesting. And also, I just checked the Roth weather report. Roth has that game at Orange. We'll see nearly 20 mile per hour sustained winds with gusts around 30. And also Arizona on the road out of the dome, they're without their head coach who was dealing with COVID issues. Several coaches, I think, are not going to be there. So we saw that line drop, I believe, about 4 points. Your general assessment here, Blender, you don't necessarily give me your Hunt take just yet, but as far as your thoughts on the slate, we have that Washington KC game, which really jumps off the board as like the clear premier game, but everybody sees that. How are you handling the slate?
I think overall, from a lineup construction perspective on DraftKings, you're going to see a lot of Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Those are going to be the 2 most popular games on the slate. The Chiefs Washington game, the Ravens Chargers game, more on the Ravens. There's going to be more Lamar Jackson, like Mark Andrews types of lineups than there will be like the Justin Herbert side. Also from a low perspective, the Burrow Bengals stacks I could see being popular as far as that plus Swift as the run back. But the overall construction is the cheap 6K running back level. Yeah. So you're going to see a lot more 3 running back lineups this slate than you will in the past 5 slates. So like we'll get through the running backs, but it's mostly in the 6K range or below, which means that most lineups are going to have at least one, if not 2 high-priced wide receivers. Now, whether or not the second wide receiver is there is dependent on the tight end position, because we have a big pay up option, Kelsey at 7K, and Ricky Seals-Jones is the punt option at 3K. So depending on if you want to play, do you want to play Devontae Adams or do you want to play Kelsey? Do you want to play Kupp? Do you want to play Andrews? Like that type of thing. And then obviously defense is defense, but that's that I'm viewing the slate from the scope of that type of lineup construction on DraftKings. And on Fanduel, it's even more pronounced. Fanduel, most likely you're either paying for 2K to 2 7K running backs or 2 5K level running backs. And most likely you're paying up at least twice at wide receiver, if not all 3 at wide receiver, and then playing either Andrews or Kelsey in the tight end spot. So and then Mahomes and Jackson are going to be massive chalk on FanDuel also. So whenever you're building a GPP lineups, think more of what the popular construction type is. So either you could build that construction type with like a 4v4, or get off that construction type completely, play cheaper receivers and expensive running backs. Understand that the projection of those lineups are going to be probably lower, but you may get a significant ownership difference. I think on the smaller slates that be more inclined to correlate than you would in a larger slate, because there's less options, one-off options to kill you in other games. So like I'm building on DraftKings way more 3+1s, even with the run backs, because like the likelihood we don't have 2 or 3 extra games where some guy puts up 40 points and you're going to need them as a one-off. So that, to me, that's the overview from a construction and strategy standpoint.
Quick question as far as DK Cash. I'm not sure if you met with your team just yet or not, or if the Discord is united or not.
The collusion chat hasn't met yet. I told them I'll be late because they're doing this show.
So it's a really interesting conundrum on DK Cash, because I know you play Cash over there, and I do as well. And it's a really interesting conversation because you got a super cheap Kelsey, you have a ridiculously cheap, Ricky Seals-Jones. No receiver I love when you consider the price. A bunch of receivers that are fine, but there's a bunch of running backs that are great too. Some people are talking about, and I've kind of tinkered with the idea of 2 tight end in Cash, but that means you're only getting 2 running backs. There's a lot of good running backs. Have you settled on anything just yet? Or are you kind of going back and forth on it? Because I'm still going back and forth on it.
I will not be playing the 2 tight end build. I know what build you're talking about.
Yeah.
I think this week the running back slots are too valuable that I'm no matter what, I'm going to be playing 3 running backs in DK Cash. Now, which running backs they are, I mean, we got maybe 5 options, 6 options even that you can play. I mean, I'm kind of settled on my Cash lineup. I'm making one non-projection based change because I'm not comfortable with one guy in my Cash lineup. And I
wonder who that is. I wonder if it's the same guy that we have.
Well, we'll talk about it. But if you did the double tight end with Ricky Seals-Jones and Travis Kelce, I think that build is perfectly fine. It's just like you said, we have a week with a lot of value running backs. Why use the flex spot on a tight end, especially when you could fill one of those slots like this? Maybe this is the hot take. I don't think Kelsey's a priority in Cash.
Interesting.
More likely.
Your thought is Ricky Seals-Jones is the better play than Kelsey. That's an interesting take, which I don't hate that.
No, it's not that he's a better play. It's just that a 3K tight at 3K, he projects better than any 3K level wide receiver. So if you play Kelsey in the tight end spot, who are you playing under 4K on this? I don't see. You have McCole Hardman, you have maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown,
Herbert.
Right? Well, no, Herbert's a running back. I'm talking about at the wide receiver slot, because you already have them filled. So if you play Kelsey there, it's how do you you're gonna probably have to play some
you sit in the 5Ks is the problem. You hit 3 guys in the 5Ks.
So I'd rather punt and use a 3K spot at the tight end position with Ricky Seals-Jones projection is better than the 4K wide receiver projections. So opportunity cost wise, I'd much rather do that in Cash. Now in GPP, if Kelsey puts up 30 points and he's the top scoring tight end by 18 points, you're going to need him because of that. But in Cash, the fact that if you're not playing Kelsey, you actually get to pay up at a wide receiver slot. And who knows, all I need is either Adams or Kupp or DJ Moore or one of those types of guys. They just match Kelsey. That what do I care now? Then I'm on par with those Kelsey teams.
I just wanted to have that quick Cash conversation. Going to bring in Andre. Andre, of course, concentrate mostly on tournaments. Your general assessment, Andre, as far as a slate, and we'll kind of bleed into the quarterbacks as well. Do you want to say what's up to chat? What up, chat? Do subscribe, turn on notifications, fire off some questions. We're going to do our best to knock out as many questions as possible at the end of the show. Do us a favor, put QQ in front of your questions so we know we can kind of go through and kind of figure out where the questions actually are, as opposed to just a random comment. Say QQ and then fire off your question. We'll do our best to knock out as many as possible before we make way and hand it off to Ben and Erik, who digging even deeper as far as a GPP conversation. And we take you guys straight up to lock, obviously, 1 o'clock. The team would go for 2.5 hours here. Andre, quarterbacks, we talked about how that, Mahomes, angry Mahomes, whatever you want to say, people are talking about Kansas City not making the playoffs. They're facing Washington, Kansas City and Washington, 6 games into the season. They have given up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks by more than 4 fantasy points than the third worst team. Those 2 teams facing each other, giving up tons and tons of fantasy points to quarterbacks. All fantasy points in general, they're 1 and 3. I know they're retiring Sean Taylor's number today, which is cool. He ain't playing, unfortunately. That's a bummer because that Washington defense is horrendous. Yeah, Mahomes, he's going to be super popular for a quarterback. Again, only 20 quarterbacks on the slate. He's projected around 14.6%. Lamar Jackson crushed on Monday night. Monday night, of course, Andre, they do not get a chance to change the salary. Salary's already out, so he looks kind of discounted. And that's the premium arms, right? It's Lamar and Mahomes, and there's another tier after them.
Yeah, I agree. Agree with that. It's hard to get away from them. I think you have to have a lot of them in your lineup, especially in tournaments. And just get different. Like Blender was saying, a lot of people are going to probably be using 3 running backs this week, a lot in their lineup. So I'm going to get different. Probably just go be overweight on the wide receiver position in the flex, just for leverage, from a leverage standpoint, and try to hopefully get more points that way. But going back to your point when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and Lamar, you have to play them. They're especially Patrick Mahomes. He's in a favorable spot. He should be more higher owned than Lamar. I expect Lamar actually ownership to maybe come down a little bit more, just because Patrick Mahomes is in a better spot. And Terry McLaurin is going to play today. Yeah, even though I have some concerns about his hamstring a little bit personally, it's difficult to just not see a lot without playing them too at all. And then when you get into other quarterbacks on the slate, I love that this is a good way where you can get away from those two, and have some guys that maybe have the upside to possibly get you around 25, 30, get you close in that vicinity and be a little bit cheaper, which I think we have a few options that can definitely do that for sure. So I look forward to seeing how the slate turns out. Running back wise, it's going to be about the same conversation too, the high and the lows with it, and trying to maybe see if you can pair one high with one low if you possibly can. The construction makes it hard. Trying to get that specifically on Fanduel. I was just actually took like half hour trying to build a Patrick Mahomes lineup and get like a 7K running back in there.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, 2 7K running backs in there, and it was not easy without sacrificing like obviously a wide receiver. So it's really going to depend on a lot of construction, but you should also have to me this week a very tight pool, and like you said, correlate everything as much as possible, because I think that's going to be the key this week.
Yeah, 21% as far as Fanduel for Lamar, 17% Mahomes. Next is Stafford at 9.8%, Heineke at 8.1%, Burrow 5.9%, Herbert 5.4%. Kyler Murray is going to be super low owned, around 5% or so. That might even be lower. That wouldn't surprise me. And on DK, same deal pretty much. 16.9% for Lamar. Mahomes at 14.6%. Stafford 9.1%. Heineke 7.3%. Burrow 7%. Blender, what are you doing with this? How are you going to be different? You want to, play whoever you want, and everybody's playing Lamar and Mahomes because that's the best plays. When you're playing them, I assume you're being different in other spots. You're finding ways to not be fully loaded up on ownership at every single spot, obviously. Yeah, I assume you like those guys. Feel free to give your point otherwise, but give me some of the lower owned quarterbacks that you're interested in.
I think from a cash game perspective, I think personally, I think if you're not plugging in Lamar Jackson, you're doing something wrong. I could yes, you could play Mahomes. If you pay down, I think you're looking more at like Burrow or Heineke.
Yeah,
but I don't even think that's I don't even think that's necessary in cash games. I mean
same.
I don't see what build that you're going to be so dramatically different that you want, that you look at and you go, oh, now that I'm able to go from Lamar Jackson down to Taylor Heineke, I can now play X. Like I guess if you wanted to play Devontae Adams and Travis Kelce in your cash lineup, I guess that would be the way to do it. I don't think that's necessary. But outside of that, nothing, from a cash perspective, GPP wise, there are plenty of stuff. I mean, we'll talk about stats in a little bit, but yeah, to me, that's it. I mean, I think there's a very straightforward slate on both sides that, you're paying up at quarterback pretty much no matter what, even on DraftKings where we tend to like to pay down if we can, but Lamar Jackson's upside and rushing floor and everything here, just give me 24 points and obviously his upside for more, and he's also going to be like 70% owned in cash groups. So just like, why even bother trying to get different?
Andre, I just see a couple of questions in chat, and I feel like we're on the conversation, so we might as well knock them out. Alex is asking, Andre, is the KC Washington game? It's going to be so chalky that we shouldn't expect a 2-1 game stack that we should pile on as far as an onslaught. Do you like that game as far as an onslaught? And I'll combine it with another question. It's expensive. You can do it, but what do you think of Mahomes with Hill and Kelsey? Can you play all three of those together?
I mean, Fanduel is hard to do. I tried, but you definitely can. You're just sacrificing a lot. It makes good for tournaments, definitely, because you can definitely find cheaper options as far as the wide receiver position to get different as far as the other two spots, and even on DraftKings you can do the same thing and it'll work out well. It's just a matter of how you're building it, and honestly I really think it depends on the running backs this week. I think the running backs are going to be more key than usual because the right combination of the running back position is going to, I think, make or break your lineups. Even if you have a Mahomes with the Kelsey and the Tyreek Hill combination in your lineups, the running backs are still going to be, to me, the key this week. So picking the right two, in my opinion, because I'm going with majority two in my lineup instead of three, I think it's going to decide everything, honestly.
Why are you going majority two running backs as opposed to three?
Because I want to be different in tournaments. I know I figured most people were going to go with three because they're cheaper. So I'm just going to get a little bit my leverage play. Besides going by stacks, so some of my stacks are going to be playing a wide receiver in that flex position. And just hoping that they have an upside game.
Let's have the Kareem Hunt conversation. I just did a refresh as far as our ownership stuff. Of course, if you guys want to use this at your own leisure, get $10 off your first month RG Premium. You can get just the football if you want just football, but of course you can get every other sport, college football, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, everything with the exception, PGA, MMA, everything with the exception of NASCAR. Of course, basketball right around the corner. Shows start here. Content starts here, I believe, next Tuesday. That's why you want to like and subscribe to the channel. There you go. Show starting, I believe, Tuesday night. Whatever break we had from baseball, we're gearing right back up. NBA right around the corner. Going to be good times for sure. Andre, Hunt is 48.7% projected owned on DK. Let me just go ahead and read this quote. Browns coach Kevin Stefanski told me Kareem Hunt, he's dealing with a wrist and a knee, is beat up, but he looked good in practice Friday. He will get more work than usual today against the Cardinals with Nick Chubb, who's out with a calf. Stefanski has a number of touches in mind. I don't want to kill Kareem, is his quote. So, I mean, what do you do with that? Coaches lie. And also the other part of it is first of all, it's going to be very windy. So they're probably not going to have a lot of success passing the ball. If they do, maybe some dump offs to Hunt. Hunt can catch the ball for sure. And there's nobody behind him. I know running backs don't matter.
Dearnest Johnson, you're not scared of Dearnest Johnson? Or
I'm
Felton?
not. I mean,
I think Ray Felton from the Thunder plays there.
I know. Yeah, 47-year-old Ray Felton, good for him. But that's so obviously it's all warranted. And again, we're going to dig through. There's some great pivots. There's some really good running back pivots we'll talk about this week. But who's taking a stand as far as Hunt, or somebody you guys just going to say I'm playing him 50% and I'll be different elsewhere? What's our official Hunt stance? Who wants to go with that one?
Me, I'm taking a stance on him a little bit just because he's getting when you say more work than what he usually gets, he normally gets about 18 touches a game. Whether it's rushing attempts combined with targets and receptions in a passing game. So how much more can he get? Besides maybe running the ball for 20 times and getting about 8 to 10 targets a game, which we can see, but with him running on a bad knee and wrist, I plan on being probably just at the field, if not majority, probably honestly being a little bit below it. Even though it's a good price, it's a good matchup. I get it, especially with Arizona having a couple guys out on the defensive end too, more so their linemen. So it's a great spot. And I hope it doesn't kill me, but I think I'm just going to be a little bit under-owned on him, and then try to get leverage by playing some other guys.
Yeah, and the pivots are really, really strong. Henderson is $6K on DK. It seems too cheap for a guy that's basically going to get the entire backfield, assuming he can avoid that blue tent. Jonathan Taylor, I know it's annoying. They're running 3 running backs, and even Mack gets some as well too, Hines as well. But awesome matchup in the dome against Houston. Swift is getting more and more, and he's basically, game script proof. He's their best receiver, I guess you could argue, in Detroit. He can get it either way. They got rid of Smith in Carolina, so Hubbard should, basically get every single carry in that backfield. I don't care about the cute thing for Mixon if he's going to play. I love him versus Detroit today. Dalvin Cook, no injury designation at all. I would think Madison earned something, maybe an 80-20 split. I have no idea, but Cook is another guy who's super interesting. Booker is the guy for the Giants, and opportunity matters more than anything. And then there's Khalil Herbert, who is a person who runs with the football in Chicago. Blender, there's a lot of pivots, and I even probably missed Darrell Williams for KC. McKinnon's going to get some of
You missed my favorite pivot.
Eckler?
Nope.
Who is your favorite? It shouldn't be Aaron Jones, although there's some leverage to him. Who is your favorite pivot amongst that bunch?
The fact that you listed all of these people and you didn't say this guy's name means that's the reason why he's going to be lower on than he should.
Antonio Gibson? It's not Gibson, is it?
See, you're still not getting it.
It's Zeke Elliott. That's who it is.
No, you still didn't get it.
Andre, who is it? Who is he talking about?
I think it is because I have him on my player pool. Hopefully he's right. It's one of two guys. I think it's either Josh Jacobs or Chuba Herbert.
There you go. Bingo on the second one.
I mentioned Chuba. You weren't listening.
No, I didn't hear you mention him.
I said they lost Smith, so with Smith gone, he's going to get all the carries. He's going to get everything back there.
Oh, I didn't. Okay. I guess you did mention it. Maybe.
Yeah. I mentioned the whole bunch.
Okay. It was a runoff. That's how many running backs are viable to play in that range.
Who's the one? Give the one you don't trust. I feel like the one you don't trust is Khalil Herbert.
I don't necessarily. He's 4,600.
Yeah, I know. He's cheap.
How much do I have to trust a $4,600 guy? I mean,
opportunity cost.
If it was 6K, that's a different story. I think the ones that I don't trust, like this, it's running back. The variance is so high on the who gets the goal line. Who gets in the goal. 5 stuffs at the goal line, and you're sitting there going, the guy could have had 30 points, and he ends up at 12. Yeah. I think if we take a look at the running back pool, a lot of times I try to think of what is the best case scenario versus what is the worst case scenario. Are they priced lower for their risk? So, for instance, Kareem Hunt. We talked about him. Yes, we have that tweet with Pelissero. Kareem Hunt at 6,200 with Chubb active is a borderline play. Like, doesn't make him a good play, but he's borderline playable at 6,200, even with Nick Chubb there. So, like, even if he just gets the same touches he normally does, like, it doesn't make him like, oh, you got to jam him in all your lineups type of play, but it doesn't make him a bad play at all. So to me, there's only upside at his $6,200 price. I'm barring an injury, obviously.
Better play on DK than Fanduel. I think Fanduel is 7-2. I prefer a little bit more on DK.
Sure, but I mean, FanDuel, the pricing is soft as it is, so you can fit these guys in anyway. Joe Mixon is someone that has upside. 6,400. Coming back from an injury, he played a little last week. P. Ryan is now on the IR. Joe Mixon could get 28 to 30 touches. I mean, he could. He has the upside of getting that. He's not priced for that. Chuba Hubbard is priced at 5,900. He could get 20 carries and 8 targets.
Yeah.
Right. So at 5,900, give it to me. Khalil Herbert, like, he's probably going to get 20 touches no matter what, and he's 4,600. So he's not priced for the upside. DeAndre Swift.
My issue with Herbert, by the way, and again, I'm probably playing him in cash on DK, maybe even on FanDuel as well, is that he's attached to just such a terrible offense. That offense is just so inept. Is my issue.
But you're thinking about upside, dude. If they only score 3 points, it doesn't matter if you have Herbert or not. I mean, you're playing Herbert because he needs to get 100 yards, a touchdown. He needs to catch 5 balls out of the backfield. I'm not saying that yes, 30 points is likely. No, of course it isn't. But he's only 4,600. So if he gets you 18, you could still win a GPP with 18. But I mean, some of these guys like Aaron Jones, like the 7K plus guys, they it's going to be hard for these 7K plus guys to really crush the 6K guys. The only guy that who the guy that I'm scared of the most, and I'm going to be over the field on him, is Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
If I told you this in the beginning of the season, this is what I'm talking about by price versus upside. If I told you in the beginning of the season, Dalvin Cook is healthy, and he has a likelihood of getting maybe 80 to 85% of the touches in the backfield, facing the Panthers' run defense, right? Even though they're much better now, we know that. And he's 7,700. Like, we would be talking about him as a cash play. We'd be saying, well, you got to play Dalvin. He should be 9,000.
Yep.
Now the question is, how much is Madison going to eat out of his workload? Because do they want to run Cook 80 to 85% of the snaps?
They also have a bye next week.
Right. So maybe they do, maybe they don't. But if they do, I mean, 7,700 is too cheap for him. So like Dalvin Cook's someone that could put up 140 yards and 3 touchdowns. So why aren't I putting him in my player pool? So like I'm thinking, and the running back position that's the theme of the running back position. That's why a lot of these running backs are going to be owned. Wide receivers, we don't really have that at wide receiver. We don't have what if this $4,700 like we really don't have that. We have like mostly efficient pricing at wide receiver, but this running back, like the way that I'm approaching it, Dean, is people that are watching are not going to like. I'm building my stacks. And whatever shows up, whatever running backs show up in my lineup, they show up in my lineup. But I'm more likely to have more Hunt, more Hubbard, more Mixon, more Cook, more Swift than Jonathan Taylor or Eckler or Aaron Jones types. And if that burns me, that burns me. But I mean, in GPP, like, feel free to just like put them in a ball with the little just pick 2 out of them, pick 3. And whatever fits, especially when they're all around the same price. So like I have no stance. I have no running back higher than in a third of my lineups. And that includes Kareem.
Yeah, because there's a whole bunch that are good and you have about like a bunch that are 25, 30%. Is that more or less what you have? I can see that.
Yeah. I've 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 running backs over 20%. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 more over 10%, and then a couple in like 2. Like I still have Jonathan Taylor, but he's only in like 6% of my lines. I have Antonio Gibson in 2%. I have Javonte Williams in 2%. Like I'm playing 180 lineups, so I'm a lot more diversified. But the top of my top 6 is Hunt, Henderson, Hubbard, Herbert, Mixon, and Swift.
Andre, jump in here as far as your running back take. And I also wanted to mention, we talked about this pre-show. Hunt is, he's in one of those games at 4:00, and it's maybe you got to get away from it. Like depending on where your games are going in the 1 to 4 o'clock window, it's possibly your only player you have at 4:00, and you're not going to pass anybody by. If you're behind, there's people probably in front of you almost definitely have him. And if you're in front, I assume you keep him. But I'm just curious, who's the best pivot? Because the 3 games at 4:00 are not spectacular, Andre. Dallas, New England, kind of sort of somewhat interesting. Vegas, Denver feels like one of the least interesting games in this slate. And then, of course, there's the Arizona-Cleveland game, which I don't know. I'm not as enthused about it as I normally. I'd be much more enthused if it was in a dome, if it was in Arizona. I'll just say that. Your thoughts on like the pivoting away, when you would consider pivoting away from Hunt, depending on what happens like in the 1 o'clock slate, and also all those running backs we're talking about, who's jumping out for who do you want to talk about? Who do you have the most of or more overweight on when compared to the field?
Well, the pivot that I like a lot, just because like it's kind of iffy because it's the coach's first game with the team, is Josh Jacobs. So I'm just curious to find out honestly how much of the workload he's going to get. But if it's the same workload that John Gruden was giving him in his match against Denver, who has not performed, but who've been pretty much mediocre, so okay against the run, I want to play him as much as possible. Play him in GPPs and get probably at the field map, probably a little bit over. It won't be that hard though with the ownership. So that's one play I like a lot, especially as a pivot, and it's going to be a little bit cheaper too. And then another guy, this is like a deep, like if you're playing a Millie Maker, and you want to go 2 cheap running backs, Javonte Williams on the opposite side, I think, or Melvin Gordon is a good GPP play. I think that has upside, especially going against that Vegas defense who's been horrible against the run this year so far. So those are 2 plays that I would say are good. Well, definitely for deep GPP plays and like Millie Maker type plays, I would say. But over the weight on, I'm definitely as of right now, the way I'm looking at it, I'm definitely gonna be overweight on on DeAndre Swift. I don't know why I said Stromae Swift.
You're thinking of basketball, the Clippers.
Basketball right now. Definitely going to be overweight on DeAndre Swift. I like that matchup for him a lot. He's getting more work as the week's going on, especially in the passing game and in the running game. So I love that play. There was one other guy. Oh, Antonio Gibson. I'm taking a stand on him. I'm going to probably be a little bit under the field on him. Like, he's playing with a hairline fracture in his shin, and that's not good. I don't know how do you play with something like that without the risk of breaking it is really high.
He's been playing through it, but like, yeah, it's
like, there was a report that came out, I think, this week. So I was at the game last week that the doctor said that multiple doctors said it's only a matter of time before like breaks. So I don't like taking that chance a little bit. So I'll be probably at the field, not below on him. Probably just get more so Terry McLaurin, who is working through a hamstring, but I think he'll be fine in the end. Joe Mixon, though, I love the call on that blender set with Joe Mixon. I think he's a great option. So I'm definitely going to be over the field on, not significantly, but definitely a little bit for sure. Yeah, and Chuba Hubbard that we just talked about. He's someone I'm using as my leverage play today for sure against Minnesota. Him and Dalvin Cook. When I saw Dalvin Cook was only like 10% owned, I was like, yeah, I got to be on them. It's no reason to not be on them and be over the field on them and use that to see as my leverage play, especially off a Hunt where I know everyone's going to be going to him. So. And Dalvin Cook is still an amazing spot, and I think he's going to get his normal workload. Otherwise, I don't think they would be playing him. I think they would just go into the bye with resting him and playing Madison. So since he's back today, I expect the full workload from him, about 20 to 25 carries, and about like 6, maybe 5 to 6 targets in the air, possibly.
You mentioned Javonte Williams. I thought there's a chance that Melvin Gordon wouldn't play. He's expected to play. Pretty much anybody that was questionable coming into today is expected to play. Actives and inactives, of course, 11:30 for the 1 o'clock games, and they come out an hour and a half before the games, the 4 o'clock games as well. And you mentioned Gibson. I think interesting as far as players that aren't going to really be rostered too much in that Kansas City Washington game with the secondary running backs. Both of them get catch passes. Jerick McKinnon and J.D. McKissick are both kind of interesting and like MMA builds for sure. We got to speed things up just a little bit here, Blender. Give me open up receivers. Give me your general take as far as how you're attacking receivers. Somebody maybe you're more on the field, some of you're less out on the field. General receivers takes. What do you have for me?
Well, I think in cash games, you're probably playing. You're probably doing you're either doing 3 mid-range or 1 down, 1 up. I mean, it really depends on if you play Kelsey in your lineup. But I think that the cash game options, if you just want to quickly, if you're just playing, good old cash games, pay up options, Adams, Cup. I mean, they're semi mid-range is McLaurin and DJ Moore. If they're the last piece and you have McLaurin as the last piece or DJ Moore as the last piece, I think that's fine.
Love McLaurin.
But Adams and Cup would be the pay up options. In the mid-range, you got T. Higgins, you got Sterling Shepard, you got maybe Michael Pittman, depending on side. I think I like him more on FanDuel. Jacoby Myers, who I prefer more on FanDuel than on DraftKings. I mean, if you pay down, you can play a Hardman, a Mooney, an Amon-Ra St. Brown, that type of player. I mean, and
you're considering Bateman because you're talking before, but there's no cheapies. There's only no cheap receivers. Bateman's still minimum 3K. They did say
what do you know
probably
about Bateman? You're gonna play Bateman in cash and just wonder?
No. I'm talking tournaments, not cash. No,
okay.
That's not a cash
tournaments, do whatever you want. I got crazy people in tournaments.
Well, there's not a lot of cheap guys, and then also the T.Y. Hilton. I know Andre was talking about him before the show started, and both these guys, it's really hard to project what they're going to do, how much run they're going to get, but they're. Bateman has some draft equity. There's, they're without I believe they're without Sammy Watkins, right? And that wide receiver core is really, really thin. There's not a lot it's not really hard to climb up that ladder pretty quickly. I don't know how many snaps he gets. Just needs one play to justify that roster spot. Is there any cheapie you like for tournaments as far as receivers? Because it's really pretty ugly.
You talking to me?
Yeah.
let's see what. Let me take a look. It's
Mecole
all stack
Hardman?
based, right? I mean, to me, the cheap guys, I'm not playing as one-offs. They're just it's as part of a stack. So let me see what's the highest exposed cheapest receiver that I got. Hardman, I guess. I'm playing a lot of Kansas City, so yeah, I'm gonna get a lot of. I guess Amon-Ra St. Brown. I've mentioned him multiple times, so that yes, I think Amon-Ra St. Brown as a run back in Bengal stacks, but from a game perspective, since we only got 10 minutes left, my hot take, if you want a hot take, the game that I'm most overexposed to, okay, like people are going away from this KC the Redskins, whatever, Washington game. I think that's perfectly fine. I actually have, I'm going to have probably as much as the field on that game, and from the Mahomes side, not the Heineke side. I also think that Matthew Stafford stacks with Kupp and Van Jefferson, Kupp and Woods and Higbee. It's leverage off of Darrell Henderson.
Who's your favorite run back on the Giants? Is it Tony?
Probably Shepard. Yeah.
Okay.
Who knows? See, the problem with the Giants is Jalen Ramsey, people are going to do the wide receiver cornerback matchups, but with Golladay out, they could play Tony wide. They could play Tony in the slot. They could play Shepard wide. They could play. I really want the guy that's in the slot, but it's quite possible we don't know. Shepard could play 80% in the slot, and Tony could play it. I mean, it could.
Shepard mainly plays in the slot, so I think.
Yeah, I know he mainly does, but it seems like they want Tony playing in the slot also. So you never know. It's the Giants. They don't know what they're doing.
It feels like most of that stuff is more effort than it's worth, at least from my perspective. Like it's, having that information, and it's never really solidified. I don't know.
Right, but if historically a 5K Shepard, with no Golladay there, I'm gonna take him.
Yep.
over a priced up Tony over 1 week sample size type of performance. But my top game, I'm gonna be under on the Baltimore Chargers game. I'm going to be under on the Cincinnati Detroit game as a stack. The projections of this game are not bad, but they're not great.
Can I guess where? I'm going to guess it's Dallas, New England, because
that's right.
That game.
I looked at you look at this game, Dean, and you go Dallas at New England, and you go, oh, okay, so like what, a 44 total? Like no, 51. Oh, so you mean the Cowboys are favored by a touchdown? That's what, now they're favored by 3.5.
Yeah.
And you go, like, what do they know that I don't know? Like, why is it this way? And I've learned from playing DFS for 6 years that yes, betting lines are mostly efficient, and yeah, sometimes they're off. Sometimes this is the median outcome of multiple different things. But if you go back and you play games, NBA, MLB, NFL, everything, every day for 6 years, more likely than not, the betting lines are going to be accurate. So I take a look at this and I go, why aren't I playing Prescott, Cooper, Lamb, Schultz? Why aren't I playing Dallas stacks? Why aren't I playing Mac Jones stacks? Mac Jones has a passing prop of 274 today.
It's a pretty big number.
That's a pretty big number. It is a higher number than Aaron Rodgers. It is like I think it's the fourth highest passing prop on the entire slate of 20 quarterbacks. Do I know why? I don't care if I don't have to know why, right? The Cowboys defense has been pretty good, but based on these numbers, remember, I'm a numbers guy. It's like, I look at the ownership of this game. I take a look at the total. I take a look at the projections and I go like, these guys just end up in they just start popping in all my lineups. I got Mac Jones, Jacoby Myers, Hunter Henry, Amari Cooper lineups. And I could jam in Hunt and Henderson. I could jam in anyone I want in there. And the projection difference is like from like Mahomes stacks, it's like 4 points. And the ownership is like 2/3. So it's like, I can't ignore that. It doesn't, to me, from a football mind, which I'm not, it doesn't make any sense. But from numerically, mathematically, like, dude, this game is going to be in like a quarter of my lineups.
Yeah, and it's going to go well under owned. Do you want to get Andre in here? Again, we're up against the clock to some degree. We have Erik and Ben. They're going to relieve us shortly. Andre, give me your wide receiver takes. Anybody you're well over the field on? Anybody you're significantly fading? General wide receiver thoughts?
Sorry, hold on real quick. Let me just get to it because I was actually setting a rule real quick. I definitely my receiver. I'm definitely my favorite game, honestly, of the slate. I'm going back to it. I don't care. He's gonna give me my money back eventually. Hopefully it's this week. And that's Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. I like the matchup against Detroit. So Jamar Chase is probably gonna be the highest receiver. I'm gonna be well over the field on for sure. Be at least double the field on him for sure. I like getting the Tyreek Hill to a lot in a way. I was hoping Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods would come in lesser owned, but as the week has gone on, they've gotten actually to where the point that I'm going to be probably at the field with them on, which is fine compared to the ownership I had on them. I do like the call of Amon-Ra St. Brown as a run back too, in a receiver spot. I think he's someone that at the price he presents can get you about 15, about 15 fantasy points for that price, and that'd be just fine. Maybe even 20 if he catches a couple more balls for that upside, which would help out, especially being cheaper than a running back on this slate. Typically, and I do like in the Bateman a little bit. I'm gonna have probably like 5% of him. I think he's a good option, especially like you said with them being thin at receiver. I can see him getting a couple targets. I just don't know how much he's going to play, which I'm going to be watching out to see for sure. And there was one more guy that I was going to be over the field. Oh yeah, don't forget about these Minnesota receivers. That's one thing I think they're in a good spot. I think today to do well. So I like Thielen more at 5.8K. He's that's too cheap when he has obviously multiple touchdown upside, and it's going to regress to some point where he's going to have to catch those, when he's going to have to get those. And this might be the game, so I'm going to try to be over the field on him just to make sure that I can get that. I like Blender's call when he was talking about with Dallas. I just can't see myself playing Mac Jones. I'm gonna have some Dak Prescott though for sure. But I like the matchup when it comes to with CeeDee Lamb and running it back with Myers for sure, or even one of the tight ends, mainly Hunter Henry is my favorite tight end on that side. So I like those options though, and yeah, that's pretty much some my receiving core. We'll have a little bit of everybody. Going to be over the field on DeAndre Hopkins a little bit too, because I think he has a chance to be to have a good game, especially at low ownership. And T.Y. Hilton, I'm going to play. I think he's a good option to try to maybe get a field ahead of the field on, especially against Houston. We know he's dominated Houston before, especially when he's playing at Houston. Which I think, either way, at Houston or in Indy, but I don't think at Houston he normally has his bigger games, but I think that it's a good option and a good call today.
Going to rapid fire these questions just a second. If you're in a legalized state for sports gambling, use the bonus code GRINDERSBET. Bet $10, get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. That is at BetMGM. Do want to mention once again, for Yahoo, use the promo code GRINDERS25 for a free $25 on your first deposit. Taking a peek over there, still 8,000 spots waiting to be claimed in that big $1 million contest. And worst case scenario, if it fills, probably not, but if it did, it's still $150,000 in overlay. Should I up my Davis Mills exposure? Blender, you're not playing Davis Mills, are you?
No,
You're crazy. Not that crazy.
I got zero. I got tons of Brandon Cooks, but I got zero Davis Mills.
Same here.
Andre, questions about pairing. Well, you said you like T.Y. Hilton. Are you going to pair him with Wentz, who's really, really cheap?
I like Wentz. There's no reason not to like Wentz. I know you have to be if you're him, but he's a good player today.
Andre, you like Swift or Mixon on DK? I like them both, but I think I like Mixon by a tick more.
I like Swift probably a tick more just because I like that game more.
Blender, best cheap running back in cash games. I guess it's the Bears running back, right?
Yeah, Herbert. Yeah, I mean, you can play Darrell Williams if you want. Also, I mean,
he works
you don't
on
even have to
FanDuel
play the cheap
so.
running. I mean, you could play. You could just go Hunt, Henderson, and play a wide receiver there. I mean, like you don't have to play Herbert, but if you're going to play a cheap running back, you're playing Herbert or Darrell Williams, but more likely Herbert.
Do ask you guys to like, subscribe, turn on notifications. 3 running backs on FanDuel today. I think so. I mean, as far as your cash game build, I think it's supposed to be. Should we be scared to go back to DJ Moore? No. Why would we be scared to play DJ Moore? I don't think so. I'm just kind of reading some questions there in chat. Top wide receiver on DK for tournaments 6,800 or less. Jason Martinez is asking us, What do you have for me, Andre? $6,800 or less, top wide receiver on DraftKings.
Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I like that too. I think Terry is what, 7-1 on Washington. I like him a good bit. Find some dollars for that as well too. Blender, got anything final thoughts before you hand it over to it's going to be Ben and Erik?
Play whoever you want, and whatever you think is going to happen, it's the NFL, right? So whatever we said right now, expect half of it to go the complete opposite way, but you just don't know which half it's going to be. Don't you love the NFL, right? Don't you? What's going to happen is that Kareem Hunt is the only reason that he's either going to get 32 touches or he's going to get injured on the first drive. So it's going to be one of the two. It's not going to be anywhere in between. It's never anything in between. Dalvin Cook's going to get 98% of the work, score 48 fantasy points. So if you could expect the unexpected, you don't have to, tilt later. Just so build your lineups for, we don't know what we don't know. So just hopefully you get lucky.
Norel asking in cash, 2 tight ends for DK Cash. Is that crazy? Asking there in chat. No, I don't think so. That is definitely a route to play. Well, RSJ and Kelsey in cash on DK. If you want to do that, I don't think that's a terrible idea. I got the whole conversation about it with somebody else last night. Andre, you got any words before we get out of here? Any final thoughts as far as this slate?
Take chances. Don't play the good plays that you like a lot. Stick to the game scripts that you like a lot too today. And I would say definitely try to get some exposure to the KC game and the Baltimore game for sure. And Wentz if you want to and can stomach that. And I think it'll be fine. And yep, Joe Burrow's going to win us $1 million today.
There it is. No reason to go anywhere. Stay on this stream, going all the way up to kickoff. Later on tonight, we're doing showdown content. NBA content starts on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Cannot wait for NBA season. It's going to be good times for sure. 5:30 standard showtime. Do subscribe. That is the show. Thank you, Blender, for stepping in for Grant. Thanks, Grant. I saw him out there in chat. Thank you, Andre. Thank you for Steven to Steven for producing for us today. That was football. That was week 6. That was week 6, the NFL week of DFS. Good luck, everybody. Crush it today. We're out of here. Oh!
Fantasy Bar with 6 of my favorite plays for week 6 on Fanduel and DraftKings, including a wide receiver I think bounces back in a big way. What game I want to stack up. A tight end I think is going to go ignored, and a running back I'm loving this week in a smash spot. Who are we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 6 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack. Good to be back here once again talking Fanduel and DraftKings. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. Now, before we get into the plays for the week, first thing, make sure you click that subscribe button. Make sure you click that thumbs up button. Also, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. And lastly, make sure you are tuning in to the DFS OGs podcast every single Wednesday, 2 o'clock Eastern, live on Twitter, on YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you enter the DFS OGs FanDuel contest, fanduel.com/OG, single entry contest with a season-long twist as well. The winner at the end is going to win $5,000. Again, that's fanduel.com/OG. You can also check out my Yahoo 6-pack each and every week. Check back tomorrow. There'll be a link right in this video to that video. All right, let's get into the plays here. Enough housekeeping items. Let's start at wide receiver. A guy I want to go right back to the well on. That's DJ Moore of Carolina. So DJ Moore finally has a down game. Sam Darnold finally has a down game. And I think what's going to happen now is the ownership is going to go down on these guys as well. And DJ Moore, a guy I want to go right back to, feels very much like Mike Williams from last week. Had a down game. Nobody's on him. You're going to get very low ownership here. Plus, you get him a little bit cheaper now. On DraftKings, the price fell a little bit after that down game, but the floor has certainly been there with DJ Moore. Even in a bad game, still gave you 5 catches. So every game this season, 5 or more receptions. So right there, you're starting with those 5 points on DraftKings. We know the upside's there. He's shown it to us multiple times, and these targets, 10, 11, 12 targets every single week. Incredible ceiling here with DJ Moore as well. A lot of things I like here. We talked about the bounce back. The total here doesn't jump off the page. Sam Darnold, people are worried about here. Christian McCaffrey may be back in that lineup, so he'll gobble up some ownership. A lot of things helping us out here on this one. DJ Moore, one of my favorite wide receiver plays here for week 6. All right, let's go to the tight end position. We're going to go to the walking wounded, the team that's really hurting for receivers. That is going with Evan Ingram of the Giants. Now, as of this recording, sounds like we're going to get Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton back, but still no Kenny Galladay, no Saquon Barkley. I get it. We don't know the status of the quarterback either. Obviously love this one a lot more if Daniel Jones is able to progress through the concussion protocol. But even if it is Mike Glennon, I think Ingram going to be that security blanket for him. So a lot of reasons I like Ingram here. One of the last men standing here in this pass catching department, which is odd to say. Usually he's the guy that's always hurt. Now he's the only healthy one amongst this group. But not a ton to love here on the Giants, but they are big underdogs in this game against the Rams. Rams almost 10-point favorites in here. So we know the Giants are going to have to be throwing a ton in this game, likely playing from behind here in this one. And the Rams been vulnerable against this position. 6th most receiving yards allowed to the tight end position. So tight end's been ugly. Look, I get it. Evan Ingram, not a play for everybody, but I think he has his best game of the season here this week against the Los Angeles Rams. All right, let's go to the running back position and get you some value. A guy stepping in for an injured CEH. We're rolling with Darrell Williams of the Chiefs. So a nice cheap running back play on both sites here, and this is the guy I'm expecting to carry the load here. Now, we know Jerick McKinnon going to work in as well, but when we get a running back in this offense projected for this many points, certainly something you're going to want to take advantage of, especially in a cash game setting, and more so on FanDuel. I think the touchdown upside is huge for Darrell Williams. He's a guy that certainly could get you multiple touchdowns. It would not surprise me to see him do that, and he still has value on DraftKings as well. This guy's been involved in the passing game, multiple catches in 3 straight games, even as the backup. So as the starter, the opportunities will certainly be there. In Washington, we know, has struggled big time defensively, and a lot of talk on their secondary. Well, guess what? 10th most fantasy points allowed to the running back position as well. Darrell Williams, too cheap on a very good offense. Take advantage this week against Washington. All right, speaking of Washington, let's go to that side. I really like that game. We're rolling with quarterback Taylor Heineke of the football team. Now, absolutely love the spot here for Heineke and this offense. Really disappointed in week 5, but prior to that, this guy has been money in the bank. In fact, averaging over 25 DraftKings points per game the 3 games prior to last week. And we know this matchup. Kansas City been terrible defensively, especially against quarterbacks. In fact, Kansas City allows the most fantasy points to this position here. So we've seen Heineke put up those big games. If we get near that 25, we're talking 4, potentially 5x on this DraftKings salary. Even a 3 to 4x on FanDuel at just 7,300 is really going to allow you to spend up on some of the other positions here. So love this matchup here. Love the correlation you can run on the other side, whether it be Darrell Williams, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, whatever it may be. This is a great spot for Taylor Heineke and this Washington football team offense. So speaking of that team, we love Heineke. Let's pair him up. Wide receiver, Terry McLaurin. So obviously the correlation here, McLaurin, the apple of Heineke's eyes, gets a ton of looks. We talked about all the run it back options. I like Darrell Williams. Love Tyreek Hill in this game as well. But McLaurin been fantastic this season. Another guy coming off a down game, very similar to Heineke, to DJ Moore, who are going to go right back on the well on 11 or more targets now in 3 of the last 4 games. So really fulfilling that alpha dog role here for Washington. We know Kansas City, we talked about how bad they are against quarterbacks. Naturally, that's going to lead them to be bad against wide receivers, and the numbers play that out as well. Bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed to this position. McLaurin bounces back in a big way, and this Washington offense has a big day against this pathetic Kansas City defense. All right, it's time to take a look at my favorite play for week 6. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest. This is a thank you to you guys for checking out the video, for hitting that thumbs up button, for your comments, positive, negative, hell, I don't care. Just love interacting with you guys out there. Look, all you got to do is get in the comment section right below the video and guess fantasy points on FanDuel for my Beast of the Week. The closest guess is going to win themselves a free month of Rotogrinders Premium. Yes, a chance to check out everything behind the scenes. including Lineup HQ. Makes your life so easy building lineups, projections from some of the top minds across DFS. If you're already a loyal subscriber, you win the contest. Hey, we'll send you a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Let's wrap this baby up. My favorite play for week 6. You know I'm asked, the beast of the week. All right, beast time. One more running back to give you. I promised you a guy in a smash spot. I am loving Jonathan Taylor of the Colts, this week's beast of the week. Now, I love this spot for Taylor and for this offense. Huge 9.5-point home favorites here against the Texans. Now, I get the concerns with the other running backs in this backfield. Marlon Mack getting a lot of work here. Feels like an audition for a trade. Nyheim Hines tends to get worked in as well. But let's think about this game here. As big favorites, Taylor going to be doing most of the heavy lifting here. They generally use Hines in scenarios where they're playing from behind. They need a pass catching back. So as much of a thorn as Marlon Mack may be, I still think there's room for Jonathan Taylor to have a massive game here against Houston. And we know this guy, big play waiting to happen. We saw it against a much better Baltimore defense. Takes that 70-yarder to the house here. Houston, 7th most rushing yards allowed to the running back position this season. So I get it. Taylor coming off a huge game. Don't like chasing those points. I feel like this is a fantastic spot for him against a bad defense, has a massive home favorites, and the price is more than fair on both Fanduel and Draftkings, making Jonathan Taylor easily my favorite play for week 6 and this week's beast of the week. All right, guys, that wraps up for week 6 in the Fantasy Bar. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, questions, or feedback, hit me up in that comment section right below the video. You can also follow me on Twitter at BeerMakersFan. Don't forget fantasy points for Jonathan Taylor on FanDuel for your shot at some free Rotogrinders Premium. And who is your beast of the week? Let me know while you're down there in the comment section. Last reminder, 2 reminders. Scoresandodds.com/beer for all your sports betting needs, and head over to FanDuel.com/OG. Only 500 spots available in our OG's Listener League. A chance to win the season-long prize of $5,000. Great setup over there. All the information.
What is going on, Rotogrinders family? Welcome to week 6. I can't believe it's week 6 already. I guess I don't know if I can't believe that it's week 6 already, or that we still have 12 more weeks after this. It feels like it's flying by, but there's also a ton of time left. As always, I am your co-host, Erik Beimfohr. You can find me on Twitter at Erik Beimfohr, and here on Rotogrinders.com across various different content. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Ben Gretch. You can find him on Twitter at YardsPerGretch, and his wonderful Stealing Signals newsletter, Substack. What is it? BenGretch.substack. I forget it every time, Ben. You got to correct me if I screw it up.
BenGretch.substack.com. You got it.
Yep. $8 a month. Awesome, insightful stuff that I'm sure we'll be talking about. Plenty of the things Ben touched on today, because in this week 6 slate, we have a difficult, I would call it a difficult GPP slate. I think the bye weeks have hit us. We only have 10 games. We have a lot of injuries and very few, honestly, appealing like game environments. And so that makes for both fun, but also I think really difficult tournament slates. So I want to kind of like just talk about that first. Is that kind of how you're feeling too? Like, you know, we know kind of what some of the chalk is and what the popular games are going to be, but I think it's pretty difficult to find, like, if there's a game, like a game stack that's all 3% owned, like it's probably that low for a reason on this slate. I don't have a lot of super strong, like mega contrarian takes. Is kind of that how you're feeling about it, like holistically?
It is to a degree. I would say, you know, I every week we're talking about like correlating your lineup and doing, you know, these little mini correlations and things throughout your lineup. previously, when there's been a little bit more value, at times we're talking about it as a way to sort of differentiate and maintain sort of, the same sort of upside. This week, I feel like it's more of a necessity because of the slate, where there's a lot of spot. Like my big overview is there's a lot of spots where people want to play guys, and there's not a lot of ownership on the other side. Like, I really like Kareem Hunt. He's going to be mega chalk. Nobody's playing Arizona, right? And so you can put Rondell Moore or Christian Kirk or AJ Green or even Hopkins, like whoever you want as your favorite Arizona player on the other side. If you're playing Hunt, you're expecting him to be so massive at a really high, ownership, that he's going to be, in a game environment where probably one of those Arizona guys is hitting, right? And so correlate that way. People want to play Khalil Herbert, but there's not a lot of cumulative ownership on Green Bay. Nobody wants to play Mike Williams again, which, look, he's super high priced. He's banged up, but we just did this last week and he broke the slate. And if you want to get up to him, Marquise Brown's also sort of like, I think, a little bit underpriced if that game does shoot out. So there's ways to correlate. And it's like, in that case, it's not really getting off of, Brown kind of saves you some money and makes it a little bit easier to fit. It's still challenging. Williams gives you more of the ownership benefit. Same thing. Justin Jefferson, same thing. Like, you can go to Robbie or Chuba. It makes it a little easier to fit that expensive player that has a ceiling that no one wants to play because he's expensive, by correlating. And then those guys are better values, and some of them are projecting for a little bit of ownership, but they give you the ability to sort of fit that more expensive player into your lineup. So smart construction is the biggest thing I'm thinking of.
I could not possibly agree more. That's exactly pretty much, I don't even have to add too much, because that's exactly what I was going to say. My wonderful friend, Jordan Cooper, Blender, who I think he was on the show before this, works for Rotogrinders. Obviously, he calls like lineups, not players. And that's exactly how I that's always true. But there are certain weeks where how you approach that is different, right? Like we've talked about some of these players that we liked that maybe were like 2 or 3% owned, that were huge differentiators and ways to kind of get leverage on the field, whatever. But this week, I don't really feel super strongly about, honestly, like any like crazy off the board plays. We've had like the Marquise Browns and the Darnell Moonies and the KJ Hamlers and the Dan Arnolds and the we come with some kind of crazy takes. I don't know that I have like a ton of those this week, but I think the real theme, even more so than finding some of those spots, is just your roster construction is going to win it for you this week, right? Correlating, your secondary correlations are going to be really important, kind of like you touched on. If you want to play Kareem Hunt, that is fine, but what does that mean for the rest of your lineup, right? Kareem Hunt's going to be the highest owned player on the slate, give or take, one of super chalky at running back, and that's fine. He's a great look at his projection is amazing. He's a great play. However, are you just going to play him as a one-off? Okay, that's also fine, but what does that mean? Right now, are you also going to like stack the Kansas City game with Kareem Hunt? It's like, are you going to play Lamar? What are you going to do? So how your lineup comes together, and from a total ownership perspective and from a correlation perspective, I think is totally the key to this week, because it's not, I'm sure we'll talk about some guys that are probably going to be, super low owned that fit some of the bills, the things that we're looking for in tournaments. But overall, I don't think that there's like a ton of appealing games. There's a few, you can definitely attack a few of these other games, but like we've talked, almost every week so far this year, where like we'll get into like 8 or 9 games and I'm like, yep, that game stack makes sense. Yep, that game stack makes sense. And like they're all unowned. And I don't really think that exists today. And so I do want to lead into the reason why I don't think that exists is because there's definitely one, probably 2 games that are just like exponentially better than the rest of the slate. And that's the biggest struggle for me. And the first one is the Chiefs Washington football team game. I think there's a lot of reasons why, this is just like everybody can sense the blow up spot for Kansas City, right? The Washington football team defense has been absolutely putrid. We don't get matchups like this where like, the Chiefs offense is obviously awesome. The Washington offense is competent. And they're like 2 of the worst defenses. And like, you just don't get this like, commodulation of all these things coming together. And then CEH is out and it's like, well, they're not going to run Darrell Williams and Jerick McKinnon 25 times. Right. So then that just creates, an even better passing environment, blah, blah, blah. So I am still gonna, that's why the roster construction thing is so important. I'm not fading that game. I'm not, I'm definitely going to be stacking that game. I don't know how many times exactly in my lineups, but that game is unfadable to me if you're playing multiple teams. And maybe we can get into some ways to kind of approach it. But the roster construction thing is really important. And so if I am going to be stacking that game, like the Kareem, I don't think I can play Kareem Hunt in that lineup. But in general, I did want to lead in with this Chiefs game because I think it's a pretty important discussion because the upside is so immense, but also it's obviously coming with a lot of ownership. How are you approaching that game?
Yeah, I mean, it's been tricky because especially on KC side, anyone who we would think could basically do anything for their offense is going to carry double-digit ownership. It seems like we have Kelsey projecting as, I think maybe the chalkiest tight end now because his price has come down a little bit, just behind Ricky Seals-Jones in lineup HQ, and actually on DraftKings we also have Mark Andrews slightly ahead of him, but right in that range. Obviously chalky. We have Darrell Williams. People want to play. Tyreek Hill's always going to grab some. Mecole Hardman is even looking like somebody who people are going to play. And so it becomes a question of I like your approach. That was interesting. That was one of my big questions for today is can you get off the Chiefs? Because if you're not playing any of these guys, there's so much ownership around that offense that whoever hits, you're probably chasing in some way. So what are the scenarios that, you can not have them in your lineup? What happens? Do you play their defense? But even they look somewhat chalky. It's right. It's a challenging, I mean, they're lower owned, but yeah, they're being played. And so I don't know. It's that's a big question on the slate is how do you approach this game? How do you approach, because obviously on the Washington side, there's chalk as well. There's Ricky Seals-Jones, especially.
Yeah. So my approach, I was going to ask you, I've been trying to read the tea leaves all week on Tyreek and Hardman because they don't project that popular. And Tyreek is the kind of guy where in a game like this, he's not going to be 5%, right? Let's just get that out of the way first. But you have arguably the highest upside player in all of fantasy, right? We've got 240 plus fantasy point games. We're through 5 games, and he's dropped a 50 ball and a 40 ball or whatever in two of the games, getting an absolutely elite matchup. But just by the way roster construction is kind of working this week, he doesn't fit perfectly. And then you also have Devontae Adams right next to him. You have Cooper Kupp there right next to him. That I'm not saying that those guys are going to steal all the ownership. Devontae, sometimes does. I don't think that that's going to happen this week, but there's enough, right? And then there's Kelsey at 7K. It's you can't really fit, you definitely can hardly fit Mahomes, Tyreek, and Kelsey, right? And then how are you bringing it back in that stack? It gets tricky. And so I tend to feel like Tyreek is the way. Dogs agree that Tyreek is the way to attack this game because he is the guy that can just blow up slates. And as long as his ownership is reasonable, right? If he's 40%, we start to think about, okay, how can we get away from this? Because he does have some down games, but when he's, I don't know, 15 or something like that, I get really excited because, just the potential upside is obviously there. We know that, but I think in a week like this, we even start to talk about a floor. He had 13 targets last week. They might throw more this week, right? We talked before, you and I, and then you talked to Sean and stuff before the season started. And it's Tyreek Hill has been this efficiency player his entire career and the big play guy, whatever. Now what happens when he gets 12, 13, 15 targets a week? He's by far the wide receiver one, even more than Devontae, because now he's getting Devontae level targets. And I feel that's all coming together for Tyreek. So I'm kind of funneling my Chiefs exposure mostly through Tyreek, actually, because I think he'll be lower than Kelsey. And then I also really like McLaurin on the other side. He, again, won't be unowned, but he also is just a little bit more expensive than some of those. We got a lot of 5 to 6K wide receivers again that look really good and project really well. And he's a little bit more expensive and kind of just screws up the build. So I'm kind of funneling through those two guys. And it's Terry McLaurin and Tyreek Hill, can't get too upset about those guys in a game like this.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think one thing I really like about that is, like, if you look at the ownership projections in big tournaments, a lot of the field is going to get their tight end from this game.
Yep.
And there's other ways to do tight end, certainly. Just finding a way to, I like to throw it on my QB stacks, right? If you have a cheap tight end option, I think there's, like, if you're playing, like, I think Dak is a reasonable stack this week. And look, you can get Dalton Schultz reasonably. He's not crazy expensive and he's going to be pretty low owned. And you're talking about a guy who's been really smashing, seeing a lot of volume, top 5 tight end right now. You can throw him on a stack if you're playing Dak already. I don't love that game at all, but if that's where you're going with that side of it, now you've gotten off kind of the chalky tight ends. And to your point, like, now you're building some leverage because you're still playing that game. You're playing the receivers, you're playing Tyreek, you're playing McLaurin. So I think that's sharp. But yeah, it's one I'm still. Do you think people are going to play Kelsey and Ricky Seals-Jones together? That's another way that, that seems like way too obvious, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen people all week, and I've already seen it this morning, like on Twitter posting, oh, it's double tight end week. And like when it's obvious that it's double tight end week,
then it's not double tight end. Yeah. It's not double tight end week.
Yeah. So that's my struggle. I'm not ignoring Kelsey and Ricky Seals-Jones. Just because of this, if I'm stacking this game, I'm not going to say like, oh, I'm Xing out the two, like, in theory, best plays of the game on this slate. But it is one of those where I like to be able to funnel through, like we talked about Tyreek and McLaurin. And I'm looking at these ancillary options. We were talking very briefly before we went live that I was upset that De'Ami Brown was active. And this was going to be my absurdly god-awful conviction play of the week that I give every week. And it was going to be DeAndre Carter because he actually earned 8 targets last week when all these other guys got hurt. Now De'Ami is back, and that murks things up. But to the point about roster construction and all that kind of thing, I think these types of guys and McColl, I'm a little worried McColl gets steamed. That's probably my biggest concern in this whole game, is that Hardman becomes the guy that people just throw in there for value. But that's what I was looking to. I think you can take shots on De'Ami or DeAndre Carter or Adam Humphries, or the probably more MME plays, JD McKissick, right? If you want to, if the game really truly shoots out, they fall behind or something, like throwing those guys in. And I think you can play Antonio Gibson. What if it doesn't go how we think it goes? What if they run and they run successfully? You can run on the Chiefs. What if Gibson smashes and they get up by 10 or something? And now Gibson is smashing. So I just think the game environment is so good, but it's so good for all these guys that, like, I'm interested in basically all of them. Do you have any kind of thoughts? I know I just threw DeAndre Carter and all these scrubs at you, but have you thought about those guys at all?
Yeah, I'm not super into the thin stuff because I think people are already so interested in this game. Mecole makes some sense. I've had concerns with Mecole's usage. They've been using him in a way lower ADOT role. We've seen his explosiveness in the past. His ADOT's only 7.2 this year. He's basically being used like Sammy Watkins last year. So, like, we're finally seeing the routes, but he's not actually running downfield, which was the upside case with Mecole, was that he had explosive splash play potential. Still does, still has the speed, still has all that. But if he's seeing a bunch of underneath targets, not ideal. I do want to note that with both Tyreek and Mecole, I expect one or both of them to spend some time in the backfield in this game. We've seen the Chiefs do stuff like that before, do some snaps back there. We've seen it a lot this year. We saw Rondale Moore do it a little bit the last couple of weeks with Chase Edmonds banged up. We've seen the Panthers put DJ Moore back there with Christian McCaffrey out. We've definitely seen it from Tyreek. That's sort of where I'm leaning, but if he's maybe more banged up than we expect for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like he is. They could do it with Mecole also. But people are excited about Darrell Williams. I feel like I'm the only one on this island, but last week, I know they didn't use McKinnon at all the first few weeks, but last week McKinnon gained a much higher percentage of snaps with CEH, like basically he played, but his normal snap rate was basically cut in half. They were using McKinnon even early in the game when CEH, before he actually had the injury, a little bit more. It seemed like they were kind of going more towards McKinnon. But Darrell Williams winds up 43% snap share. And again, CEH played a lot. He had been at 34 and 36% the 2 previous weeks. Basically no real gain. McKinnon ends up at, like, I think 31% 10 fewer snaps in Williams, not that far behind him. And McKinnon had not played really any snaps all season, basically. So I think people are overlooking that McKinnon got a bigger gain with CH not a part of the offense. In a sense, it's like maybe Darrell Williams sort of has his role. They like him as a pass blocker, all that stuff, but maybe they acknowledge he's not exactly the most explosive guy in the world. He could get the goal line work. He could get the receptions, but Jerick McKinnon would be used in some of the more explosive stuff, some of the, design plays they've done for CEH in this line of thinking. At any rate, I'm probably not playing McKinnon, but it is sort of a warning on Darrell. That's something I'm thinking about. And then as well, that look, like Darrell Williams is not a great football player. He certainly has some paths to the receptions that you need and the touchdowns that you need to have a decent game. But because of that, they might just continue to ignore the running back. They might put Tyreek Hill in the backfield or Mecole in the backfield and those things. So those are different things that just from a matchup perspective, I'm thinking about with Casey's offense. But yeah, it's a challenging game with the ownership and everything. It's a challenging one to figure out how to play.
I really, really like that. I was gonna ask you, like, I thought you were about to lead into I'm playing Jerick McKinnon today, which felt like an evergreen statement from the last like 8 years of fantasy football. But I do think it's a perfect segue actually into the running back position. We talked about that Chiefs game a lot. Obviously, it's difficult to, you're not getting ownership leverage in that game really, right? It's just not really possible. But like I said, my personal preference is I'm not outright fading it. You can use these guys as secondary correlations on another game stack, right? Which we'll get to. We still got plenty of time, and I'm sure people will start asking about stacks because we don't talk about stacks in the first like 10 minutes. We get in trouble. But I think that there are ways to play them, like Tyreek and McLaurin with another cheap stack or something. That Cowboys game is actually really, really cheap and one that pops out to me. Or you can stack this game. But your point about Darrell Williams brings up kind of this segue into the running back position, which is where I think personally you can get the most different while giving up the least amount of like projection and upside. I have a couple of guys that I particularly like, but I am just going to pull up really quick the running back like projected ownership. Obviously, we see Kareem Hunt at the top. We have Khalil Herbert second, which I'll be interested to kind of see what happens with him because I'm almost treating him a little bit closer to the Darrell Williams thing. And that was what I was going to bring up is I'm not super interested in Herbert or Darrell Williams because I just don't see the upside that you need at their ownerships. If they were unowned, maybe I might take a small shot on these guys, but as chalk, I find it, but on DraftKings, like, Khalil Herbert is 4,600. Darrell Henderson is 6K. That's $1,000. We're not talking about, you have to fade, a 10K CMC to get this guy. The pricing tiers are so tight together that this 6K range is loaded. And so I'm kind of avoiding those cheap running backs. And then I think you can find pivots within that 6K range, away from Hunt. You can, so like if you want to fade the Chiefs game or just maybe even play like a secondary correlation, like I think if you play Tyreek and McLaurin, you can play Hunt probably because your stack's probably going to be low owned. But like if you're stacking that game, I would move away from Hunt. And there's guys here that I really like, even like just as much probably as Hunt and Henderson. The first one that jumps out to me is I have two conviction plays. I'll ask you the first one. Jonathan Taylor. What are you in on JT? Because I thought coming into the week, I was like, oh God, am I going to have to fade JT against the Texans because he's too popular? And he's not looking like he's going to be that popular. So that has me really intrigued.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've seen that this team wants to win through Taylor. They're not particularly good otherwise offensively. They do have T.Y. Hilton back, which is interesting. And he's always been really good against Houston, but, probably not at the stage of his career returning off IR. I do really like Taylor as a play this week. I also think there's paths to him failing, obvious. I mean, there is for every player, but, they're using Marlon Mack too much. They seem to be trying to showcase him for a trade is sort of the way that I've been thinking about it. But it's like, it is kind of silly. He looked all right. He had some efficient runs last week. But at the same time, like he doesn't look like Jonathan. Like Jonathan Taylor is one of the best 5 running backs in the NFL. And so anytime you're taking carries away from him, you're just like limiting the chance that you might get an explosive play or something. Like imagine look at like what the Titans do with Derrick Henry. They give him as many carries as they can to hope that he breaks something. And eventually he does, right? The Colts are sort of doing the opposite thing. And I think in ways it may have cost them against the Ravens, where they were up and they were giving Marlon Mack a lot of touches. And Mack, like I said, he was having some nice runs, mostly taking what was blocked for him. But if they do that again this week, Taylor smashed on Monday Night Football because of that 70-yard reception. We can't bank on that every week, obviously. And he also was able to get home in the red zone for the first time in I think the season, right? Like he's been struggling to score. Maybe he did the week before as well, but there's certainly paths to him failing. I think they need to use him more. I'm a massive Jonathan Taylor fan. I like playing him, but I also don't love this game. I think it could just be a really gross, low scoring game.
Yeah, I'm pretty torn on him because I think the ceiling is very clearly there. This is obviously a matchup that he can crush. I mean, it's the Texans. I also think the Colts defense is so bad that the Texans might be able to keep in the game just enough, right? This isn't going to be 45-0. And 45-0 would be fine, but you know what I mean? It's not going to be like the Marlon Mack show the whole second half because the Texans are totally down is basically my take. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but there are so many guys in this range. And now we got a couple that I'm going to kind of pivot to in Joe Mixon. I want to talk about Joe Mixon and I want to talk about Chuba Hubbard. Because he's fascinating with both of those guys are fascinating to me for almost the same reasons, right? So Samaje Perine is out for the Bengals. Joe Mixon gets arguably the best matchup in the league for a running back and is supposedly back healthy and supposedly going to get the work that we were all excited. Week 1, he crushed being, playing tons of snaps, getting tons of volume, and we were excited for him. That kind of went away a little bit, and then he got dinged up, and it's been a little murky. Now that's supposedly back in the absolute smash spot, but just because of the way the slate has broken out, he's also not getting a ton of ownership. On the flip side, you have Chuba, who, maybe hasn't smashed quite like people hoped in the CMC, in this quote unquote CMC role. They had the kind of fluky game with the Cowboys, and maybe you can touch on some of the nuance around Chuba's role while these last couple of weeks. But like Rodney Smith is gone, and Chuba got 29 touches last week, 24 carries and 6 targets, and this matchup is totally fine. Last year, I'm not saying he's Mike Davis, I'm not saying he's CMC, but like if we had Mike Davis at 5,900 here, like he would be the stone chalk. So these kinds of pivots at running back, like Mixon, like Chuba, even like JT, but I think I like these other guys a little bit better, are really where I'm starting to hone in, especially in like those Chiefs game stacks. Do you have any kind of those running backs or anybody else that you've been looking to?
Yeah, I mean, definitely those guys. Some of the higher price guys are going to go way under-owned as well, like getting up to Dalvin. I think Aaron Jones is like we've seen some good stuff from AJ Dillon the last couple of weeks, but Aaron Jones still has a ceiling every week. But it's tough to get up to them. At the same time, it's not impossible. They're not that much more expensive than this range that feels so healthy. And it's like, man, you can get up, you can get Aaron Jones. You can get up, you can get Dalvin Cook if Dalvin Cook is able to play a ton. Those guys are really good at football. Hashtag analysis. Chuba Hubbard is a dude that I came into the week really excited about because week 3, McCaffrey goes down. He runs routes on 51% of dropbacks in a game that McCaffrey was playing. Week 4, he only runs 22% because Rodney Smith took over the receiving role. Week 5, Rodney Smith's gone now, and he gets back to 40%. He's more like an every down player. It is, he's not in the like Mike Davis would have ran more than 40%. 40% is not like elite for a running back's routes number. You still have Royce Freeman in there running some routes. But I do think that has the potential to continue to creep up. Now that they've put McCaffrey on IR, it's clear that they want Hubbard sort of to be their lead back with McCaffrey out. I think that can creep up. That can be a 3-down workload. I completely agree with you that he's a guy that's certainly worth considering. Mixon, I can see, but I'm like not in love with because of the injury, the way they used him last week. They didn't give him a ton of snaps. It's kind of, I think, wishful thinking from a fantasy perspective that, sort of part of the argument with Mixon is that they will be in a game script to use him, but then it's sort of wishful thinking to think that they would be like, well, he's also healthy enough that we won't do what we just showed would do last week, which is like lessen his workload, right? Like we would want him to get 25 carries. That's sort of the point with Taylor. Taylor smashed the Texans in the past, but a lot of times 20 plus, 25 plus touches. It's hard to see that with the way they're using Mac. It's sort of hard to see that with Mixon as well. This is a really fruitful range. So you're kind of like definitely nitpicking. I would say of those though, like Hubbard's the one that to me, kind of from an ownership and usage standpoint, I like the mix and think that like he could really pop. And I think Justin Jefferson is being overlooked because he hasn't had a blow up week yet. Didn't score week 1 when he should have. He got in every week since. He has at least 18 PPR points, and week 1 he would have as well if he gets that TD. And no one's treating him like the top 5 receiver he's been. Everyone is kind of acting like he has been as disappointing as like AJ Brown and DK Metcalf to a lesser extent. Like a lot of those guys in seasonal that were in that range haven't really been great. But Jefferson has been very good. And for whatever reason, it seems people don't want to sort of acknowledge that. And we know he has a ceiling. That dude's going to have a 35-point game eventually. So the Hubbard Jefferson combo is one that I think is really interesting.
I really like that, especially that's just such a good way to, again, think about your lineups in be thoughtful about your lineups, right? Like if you play Hubbard and you play Justin Jefferson and you want to play the Chiefs, or you want to play Kareem Hunt, or you want to play Ricky Seals-Jones or whatever, you can do that. No one is playing. Like, I don't even think this is on FanDuel, because Luis in the chat was asking about FanDuel, and I do want to touch on a couple of macro things as it relates to FanDuel. But like, I'm not sure Justin Jefferson gets the 7.3% even on FanDuel, where it's pretty easy to afford him. He's 8K on DraftKings. You're not playing Justin Jefferson with Devontae, Tyreek, Kelsey, at least not easily. I don't know how you're fitting those guys. And so the ownership is going to be so low. And I really, really, really like that one too. So I want to hit on a couple. We'll get to the stacks and kind of some of that stuff in just a second. I want to hit on a couple more running backs. And then Luis was asking about FanDuel. The big thing for FanDuel for me, that I know we did kind of a macro slate analysis overall, with a little bit looser pricing that FanDuel has, and with it being so touchdown heavy, right? Half point PPR being so touchdown heavy, the combination of those two things, I think the biggest macro takeaway for me is you can't sacrifice a single roster spot to, like on DraftKings, like I brought up like the silly, right? Like De'Ami Brown, DeAndre Carter, like we might bring up some other kind of punt guys that you might need to fit what you want on DraftKings. You can't do that on FanDuel. And like sometimes that might even mean sacrificing Devontae Adams, or like Derrick Henry teams weren't even winning every tournament last week, and he scored 3 freaking touchdowns because you had Chubb go nuts. You had all these, like, because you can afford all these 6 or 7K guys that are just immense upside plays. And so that's kind of the big takeaway for me. Not that you can't go get Tyreek and Mahomes and Devontae and Kelsey in that on FanDuel. You certainly can, but I would just be cognizant of, I can't punt it off with, De'Ami Brown. I'm not tossing De'Ami Brown into game stacks on FanDuel because I need all my dudes to be able to go get me, 25 fantasy points in half point PPR to win a tournament on FanDuel. So it's actually a pretty drastically different construction. The other thing about that is you can't make up for a lack of upside through like kind of this volume thing, right? Like Cole Beasley is like a random dude who a lot of the times will pop on DraftKings because he goes like 8 for 80 with a touchdown, or God forbid he gets 100 yards. He's a smash. But like on FanDuel, it's like you go 8 for 100 without a touchdown. Like, who really cares? It's 14 points. That's really nothing. So that's kind of my big takeaway with FanDuel. Let's hit on a couple of running backs. Another guy that coming into the week maybe thought would have been a little more popular with Saquon out is Devontae Booker. It's crazy this week. There's all these guys on the same week with all the running back injuries. You have Devontae Booker with Saquon out at an affordable price. We kind of talked about Hubbard already. DeAndre Swift is he's never going to be more than like 6,300 apparently on DraftKings, and he's reasonable on FanDuel. Antonio Gibson again in that game as a contrarian piece. Are there any other running backs? And then Javonte, they asked about Javonte too.
Javonte is interesting, but we're still seeing basically a total 50-50 split, which is becomes a little bit challenging still. I think broadly, we have an issue right now with injured running back, backup, he's going to get everything. And that's not how any of this is working, really. Like, I mean, like Darrell Williams could be very good. He's obviously going to get an increase in his role, but I was talking about the ways that he could fail. And there's like 3 different ways. They just throw a ton. They use the receivers in the backfield. They use McKinnon more than we think, or he's just not very efficient because he's not very good. It is a good spot for him, but that's like not a just plug and play in my mind, not just a plug and play backup. Meanwhile, you talked about Devontae Booker. You want to, it's not a good spot, but they are home, but they're home underdogs. That guy played 88% of the snaps, I think it was. And Saquon played 9% before getting hurt. So he basically had like 91% of the other snaps where Saquon was out of the game. Booker plays 88%, plays basically all of them. They had that Gary Brightwell dude active. He was the guy that a few weeks back was active when Booker was not. They mentioned it was for special teams, and because they were thin in another position group, they needed to have an extra guy up at a different position group. This week, Saquon goes down, or this past week, Saquon goes down. Brightwell's up. It's not like their third running back was inactive, or we're going to have a situation like we had with Hubbard, where suddenly Rodney Smith is active and running the pass routes. That's not. I mean, Brightwell's the main other guy that they had up when they had Booker down lately. And Brightwell played on special teams, did not play a single offensive snap, is my point. So what we saw from Devontae Booker was pretty clear indication this dude's going to be in every single down back. That is the plug and play situation. Yeah. Not a good spot, not a great offense, all of that stuff. But there's a big difference. Like snaps is one of the biggest indicators of running back upside. There's a big difference between the upside of Devontae Booker, because he's just going to be in this game every single snap, most likely, and the upside of Darrell Williams, who almost certainly will not play more than like maybe 60-ish% of the snaps. I mean, people seem to think he's going to play, Darrell Williams is going to play 75% plus. That would shock me. That would absolutely shock me. So those are huge differences in my mind. Khalil Herbert is somewhere in the middle of that scale. Obviously, Damian Williams out as well. They don't have a lot of depth, but he's a rookie. We don't know that he's going to play every single snap. He could play every single snap. So, I mean, that's my one thing that I want to emphasize with these backup running backs is it's not the same. Like it's not an apples to apples thing. Teams are different. Situations are different. Booker, I think, is actually kind of sneaky because no one wants to play him because of the spot and everything, but he's cheap. And I actually think this dude's going to play 80-90% of the snaps, which is huge at the running back position, regardless of, team situation or what have you.
You can just back into good, like really, really good fantasy games by simply being out there at running back. Right. And like, we just don't have these guys anymore, right? Like it just like doesn't happen. CMC was ceding snaps to Chuba when he was at not a ton, but like Chuba was playing when McCaffrey was healthy. We just don't have these situations very often. That's why Najee is like always in play every single week. Like nothing matters because Najee's going to play all the snaps and get all the targets and all of that. So yeah. I do think it's a really important thing. And we're hitting on these running back things. We're about to get to some stacks so we can kind of bring it all together. But like the running back thing, I think is like definitely the most important part of this week, because as we'll get to some of these stacks, there's really 2 games that are like, multiples better than all the other games. And I like some of the, quote unquote, sneaky stacks or whatever. But this running back spot, because of a lot of the things that Ben just talked about, because of pricing, because of all these injuries, because of just how many options that we have, to me, it's the clearest spot to be like really smart and thoughtful about. Like, I like Kareem Hunt too. One interesting thing I did see on Twitter about Kareem Hunt was they mentioned like he's not fully healthy either. And they have like a number of snaps and touches in mind for him that they don't want to exceed. So like, if you think Kareem Hunt's going to come out here and get 30, get all of the work, I don't think that that's very reasonable. He's still obviously a great play. I'm playing him in cash games, but it just goes to show the point of like, honestly, from like that, from Devontae Booker, I'm not going to include, Darrell and Herbert, but from like Devontae Booker up to right before the elite tier, like up to JT and those guys, like, what is really the difference? Like, at least from an upside and a projection sense, they're not really that different. So I think that's a really good place to be. Perfect timing by Jacob in the chat. He brings up Tyson Williams is again inactive. I don't know what they're like. This guy must be, he must be dumb or something. I don't know what the deal is with Tyson, but that's a natural segue into the second kind of really, really exciting game. And I think that means fairly like real things for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. They've been passing a ton for the Ravens, and they've been crushing. Now they get Rashad Bateman back. Obviously, the Chargers are probably going to push them to score when you remove Tyson. Not that he's amazing, but he's at least the one back that might be able to do some stuff on the ground. You just put everything now onto Lamar. Lamar is also very popular, but I'm not sold that most of the pieces in this game are going to be crazy popular. How are you kind of going after this one, this Chargers Ravens game?
Yeah, I think you got to have exposure to Lamar. I mean, this has a high total. People seem to be not super excited about it. There's different ways to play Lamar. I think you kind of have to, for me, it's like the way that he's throwing more, the idea of like a naked Lamar is not really as viable. I think you want to play Marquise or Mark Andrews. One of those guys is going to pop if Lamar hits a ceiling and is the week winning quarterback. I like the Chargers. I mean, I'm having a hard time with some of the projected ownership I'm seeing around where no one wants to play Justin Herbert. I get that because if this game blows up, you probably want Lamar over Herbert, but no one wants to play Mike Williams again. I mentioned him earlier. It does get very challenging from a salary perspective, but we know the dude has a ceiling. Brandon Staley talked about on Friday with his knee that they were just being a little bit cautious. There was some swelling, this, that, and the other thing. But he was like, we're hopeful. And then, it came out, I believe overnight, one of the Schefter tweets that Williams was going to play. I don't think he was ever really in doubt of missing is sort of my point. And the way that he's rolling, we just did this last week. We sat and talked about the Chargers and Browns for how long, the upside in the game. That ended up being a smash for basically any tournament. If you got out and got on Mike Williams, who was low owned, despite having shown us a huge ceiling multiple weeks already this year, you were in a great spot. And now, again, nobody wants to play him because he doesn't fit, because of salary or whatever. If he scores 25, 30 points in a game that shoots out, you're going to wish you found the salary. It's basically that's the way that I think about it. The ceiling is such a massive part of this equation. And again, nobody wants to play the dude. So you're getting that great sort of, ceiling ownership combination on him. I think he's him and Justin Jefferson are the two that this week, I don't think you should get that good of a ceiling ownership combination, essentially, just out there.
Totally agree. The Mike Williams thing is so funny. And maybe we'll just do this he'll catch another couple touchdowns this week. We'll come back and be like, oh, nobody's playing him at 8,500 next week. But it's the perfect point, right? Like Mike Williams has been arguably the star of the fantasy football season. Right, like the biggest breakout, one of the highest scoring fantasy players, and because of preconceived notions about who he was, maybe preconceived notions about the Chargers, maybe a little bit of sticker shock, right? Projections are not saying that he's like this total smash. What if he is just like the wide receiver 2 in fantasy this season? We would be like, why are we not just jamming him?
Even if he's not that, we know that his particular usage. Look, last week he caught multiple deep bombs for touchdowns. We know that he can get down the field and have these massive games that will blow up Slate. So, what are we doing? You can't just not play the guy. I understand. Look, Keenan Allen, I have as a huge buy right now. Bounce back, great value. I understand you can play the tight ends. You can play Jared Cook. You can play Donald Parham even, who they're talking about using more, and that fits better. And you can correlate your tight end. There's ways to play this game that I like that include all of those features, but Williams is the one I really wanted to highlight because it's like, we just did this last week and he scored 2 long touchdowns. Even if he's not elite, he is a player that can do that. And he's done it so much. And Justin Herbert is looking to him even more than Keenan Allen right now. That is, DFS in 2021. That's where we're at. Like, people are like, oh, well, I'm going to fade this. Like, no one just chases points anymore. This is a situation where I think it's a mistake. And look, he does have a knee issue. Obvious path to failing, but I think it's a right process play, absolutely, to get Mike Williams even at 8,100 into GPP lineups at a 5% ownership rate right now. I mean, that's a mistake. He should not be in 5% of lineups.
I agree. And we will get to, I got your guys' questions. I got them queued up for the last final few minutes. We will hit some of these questions because I do want to hit on a couple of, these other stacks. So I will say about those 2 games, I've said it multiple times already now. They are so infinitely better from a floor, from a ceiling, from maybe not as much of value, but like Lamar is a super value. On that. Keenan is a pretty darn good value. And then like Eckler, Mike Williams, Hollywood, right? We know how people will say the matchup is not ideal for Hollywood because of the way the Chargers. I don't think the matchup matters for Hollywood. Andrews is obviously good. If you really want to throw Bateman into a stack at 3K on DraftKings, you can do that too. So all of these pieces fit together in this and the Chiefs game so much that's why we did the running, like we went so hard at kind of the running back thing, because I'm not leaving this slate. Like I love to be contrarian, sometimes too much. I love to, put the GPP bro hat on, but I think you also have to be sensible about slates and what, also like what is efficient ownership. If Mike Williams is low owned in that game or you don't want to play Lamar, play Herbert. Herbert's not going to be super, super chalky, right? There are ways to attack these games. That you can still be smart in tournaments, I think. So those are the big ones. I'm still heavily focusing there. However, there are some other games that we can hit here really quickly, kind of a quick rapid fire. You brought up the Cowboys Patriots game. I think that one makes a ton of sense, particularly on DraftKings with the Dak is affordable, Amari CD cheap, Dalton Schultz is a nice tight end target, and you have some fairly clear bringbacks, I think, to me on the Patriots side. Are you playing that game? Yeah, I am. I think it's a really good one. Easy way to get Schultz in there. He's a clear third part of the passing game. If you want to get, easy way to get your tight end. Also easy if you play Dak to use Hunter Henry as the bring back. I think he's kind of distancing as the pass catching tight end in New England. So I like that with these stacks, you can get your tight end correlated. But yeah, I mean, Jacoby and Nelson Aguilar, Aguilar is like more of a, larger field option, I guess, more of an upside, like riskier dart throw type play. But I think you could throw him into some of these stacks. And then obviously you have Amari, Lamb, Schultz. I think we have like a clear 3 options on both sides in the passing game. And Dak, instead of, I talked about Herbert and Lamar both being somewhat viable in that shootout. Like we know we're playing Dak instead of Mac Jones. It's just very clear how to stack this game is what I'm getting at. And I think it could be pretty interesting. New England's been willing to throw more with Mac Jones. If Dallas sort of pushes the tempo and that's the type of game environment that we see, you're going to want Dak probably. You're going to want a couple of his receivers, and there's whichever of the Patriots hit. I think you can do both, like Jacoby and Henry coming back. Like I have a lineup that's a Dak double stack with 2 Patriots coming back, full game stack on this game, and I think that is like a large field option. And I to that point, I really like that. I guess I can get rid of the Mike Williams picture there. Huh? But I really like that type of, I don't think people will go that far in tournaments. And as the slate sizes get smaller and as the viable games, become a shorter list, those kinds of like, I just need to get this one thing right. Yep. Cowboys score 45. They make the Patriots throw a bunch. It's like, I got that one thing right. Nothing else really matters on that slate. And that becomes more viable as we get into these bye weeks. You wait till next week, week 7, the death week of it. Every good team is on a bye. Next week, that'll be the case. That'll be the case too. So I'm doing similar things as well with like just true huge game stacks and then pile in my running backs or whatever I need to make things fit around it. And I think that is an important note. I think honestly, those are like the only 3 games I'm personally like super interested in stacking. I do think that the Panthers game is interesting because of there's clear pieces like Justin Jefferson, right? That Dalvin Cook, Thielen, DJ. I really, really like DJ Moore today. Robbie, I think also makes sense. We already talked about Chuba. I think that game is interesting. I struggle a little bit with, like pace and seeing that game truly shoot out, but I do really like a lot of the individual pieces of that game. So I think that one makes sense. I don't think it is super crazy to stack the Colts game with Brandon Cooks as a bring back as well. I'm actually
seeing that as like, I agree. Part of the reason I was sort of down on Taylor's, I'm seeing that as something that a lot of people are saying. And it's like, but to me, it looks like the worst game of the week that people are kind of talking themselves into. It's not a horrible option, but like we know it's going to be Cooks that's going to be the bring back, and Taylor. I think there's actually going to be a decent number of lineups that have those two. There's a few more that are interesting. I think Cincinnati Detroit could be a really interesting game. I don't know that you really want your quarterback, but that does look a little chalky, the ways that you can play that. But I think that's an interesting one. And then Vegas, Denver, I've been looking at. Like you can get Sutton Ruggs, Sutton Waller, Fant Ruggs. They're all somewhat affordable, like combinations that could get your tight end in there if you don't have it in your quarterback stack. these little mini correlations. I don't love that game. John Gruden got fired, all these things, but there are ways that game can shoot out a little bit. We've seen Sutton ceiling. We can definitely see a ceiling from Waller and Ruggs. So those are some other ones I'm looking at.
Yep. I totally agree. I am going to hit a couple of these questions now before we start to wrap up. There's a question on Herbert versus Javonte. There was a couple of Javonte questions. I'm just going to hit the Javonte thing. I would not play him in cash games. I would play Khalil Herbert in cash games for the block, if anything. But I think Javonte is a fine kind of large field tournament play, but I'm just basically meh on it. I think running back is so strong that Melvin Gordon is not going anywhere immediately. I think you can mix him in if you want to really get kind of contrarian hope. He's a really good football player, so maybe he pops a couple, but I would not play him in cash to that question. Favorite wide receiver on FanDuel. Ben has kind of already talked about Mike Williams and Justin Jefferson. This is a sort of a cop-out. I know I have DraftKings up right here, but the most interesting guys to me are some of these studs. Like if Tyreek Hill here on DraftKings is 15.7, it's like the 6th or 7th highest on wide receiver. If Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill and Terry McLaurin and these guys are like reasonable ownership, Mike Williams, Justin Jefferson, whatever these elite guys at wide receiver that are going to be under-owned, that's where I'm looking, right? That's why you're talking about Justin Jefferson. That's what the Cowboys guys, right? Nobody, and now all of a sudden we're not playing CeeDee Lamb. This is the week we gave up, right? We haven't given up for a month. Now we have given up on CeeDee Lamb. I want to pile onto those guys. So we got just a couple of minutes.
Completely agree with that. I mean, I even am tempted by Justin Fields again. It's easy to be like, oh, we just need to learn our lesson, but there's still a ceiling there. The dude rushed for almost 100 yards in the preseason. Like the rushing could come back anyway.
And someone's going to push them eventually. I don't know what week it's going to be. Someone's going to make them have to be aggressive on offense eventually, which who knows when that'll happen, but it is going to happen.
It's not good analysis to sit here every week and say the same stuff, but I think there's really strong merit to that. That's part of the reason we're not doing it. You guys are annoyed of hearing me talk about Justin Fields. He's going to have a ceiling game at some point this year. It's not going to not happen, and he's going to be low owned when it happens.
I agree. So I am going to leave these questions. We have to wrap up. I'm getting the message from producer Steve to wrap up, but I want to hit the hot take section. We always leave it with here's your flag plant. Here's your hot take of the week. And I'm going to pass it to you first, because I don't have a very good one, but you gotta leave us with a hot take, a bold take.
I'll say Justin Jefferson, 100 plus and 2 touchdowns today.
Ooh, 102. I really like that. I am going to go. You didn't agree with me. So now I have to jam the Joe Mixon flag down. And Joe Mixon does come back and play the role that we hoped, he would continue throughout the entire season as the workhorse without Samaj P. Ryan. And he runs for 102, and he's your GPP winning pivot off of the Hunt and Henderson chalk. So, all right, guys. That wraps us up. Thank you. Hopefully we hit everything. If you have more questions, Crunch Time is following us up now, leading you all the way up to lock, and they can answer all of your cash games, tournament questions. So that is it for myself, for producer Steve, and of course for Ben. That's week 6 GPP takes, and we will see you guys in week 7.
Fantasy Bar 6 plays for you on Yahoo for week 6, including a couple running backs I think are too cheap. We're going to build you a little mini game stack, a value tight end, and of course, my favorite play of the week. Who we talking about? Belly up to the Fantasy Bar and find out. Welcome in, guys. Week 6 edition Beers Daily Fantasy 6-pack talking Yahoo this week with 6 plays for you over there. Thank you, as always, for stopping by and checking out the video. Now, before we get into things, make sure you subscribe to the channel and you hit that thumbs up button. That's the tip jar here in the fantasy bar. Also, special offer here on Yahoo. Click the link below the video and for a shot at $25 free to use on Yahoo. So get signed up using that link below. Also, head over to scoresandodds.com/beer for all of your sports betting needs. And make sure you check out my Fanduel and Draftkings video, link right there, with 6 more plays that I'm liking for week 6. All right, let's jump into things here on Yahoo. Let's start at the running back position with Latavius Murray, $19. Now, I know the Ravens running game has been a little suspect and been confusing, and so many guys in this lineup here, but it's become clear that Latavius Murray, the guy they want to be the starter, and he's been pretty productive here. Now, 3 touchdowns over the last 5 games. I know there's been some spots where he hasn't been very productive. I think this game here should play out very well for Murray. Ravens home favorites here. Solid 27-point team total in this one. Lamar Jackson can't do everything. We saw him put this team on his back last week, but I think they get Murray a lot more involved here this week, and we know the Chargers' weakness is definitely against the run. 6th most rushing yards allowed. The Cleveland Browns tore them up on the ground last week, and I think Lamar does his thing, but Latavius Murray has a big day as well, under $20. All right, let's go to the quarterback position in the mid-range. We're going to roll with Joe Burrow of the Bengals. So really love the spot here for Cincinnati's offense. We know Detroit, a terrible defense. We know this is a spot Burrow and the boys can really exploit here. And Burrow been very consistent to open the season. We're talking about multiple touchdown passes every single game this season. So at least 18 Yahoo points now in 4 of the last 5 games. And this is one of those matchups that could really unlock the ceiling of Joe Burrow and this offense. And the stacking partners here are really enticing as well. We know Jamar Chase on a roll. T. Higgins has had some big games. Hell, even Tyler Boyd, a guy you could throw into this stack. So a lot of ways that you can do this stack. Point is, I think Joe Burrow in a great spot against a bad Detroit defense. So we're going to stack Joe Burrow, and we're going to do it a little different. We're not going to go with the easy one. Jamar Chase, too easy. We're going to roll with T. Higgins, $20. Now, I don't even hate the double stack here, but I think Higgins is going to be a fraction of the ownership. If you are looking to pair just one pass catcher with Burrow, or hell, I don't hate the double stack with Chase, but I like this spot for Higgins. 2 touchdowns in the 3 games that he's played this year. Cincinnati, pretty solid team total here, over 25. So expected to score almost 4 touchdowns in this game. And we mentioned that Detroit defense, 30th in DVOA against the pass this year, and bottom 12 in receiving yards allowed to that position. So Higgins, $20. We know the upside's there. I think he has a big game here, his biggest game of the year against this Lions defense. All right, let's get you a little correlation on the other side here and build you a little stack. We're going to go running back DeAndre Swift of Detroit. As you know, I'm a big proponent of the run back on the other side, and sometimes it can be tough when you're looking at the Lions, but Swift just too cheap here on Yahoo at just $20. Now, most running backs, very game script dependent. Some guys, if the game gets out of hand, they get taken out of the game. Some guys, if they're playing from ahead, team needs to pass, whatever the case may be, does not really matter how this plays out. If it's a competitive game, Swift is going to be a big part of the game plan. If Cincinnati gets out to a lead, well, guess what? Swift's going to become even more important in the passing game. You got TJ Hawkinson dealing with injuries. They lost Quintez Cephas, so he may be their best pass catching option in this entire offense. And we've kind of seen the targets trend that way as well. Averaging 7 targets a game, has found the end zone in 3 of the 5 games so far this season. And Cincinnati has really struggled at this spot, which is the main point I want to get across here. 2nd most receiving yards allowed to opposing running backs have the Bengals given up. So Swift going to be a big part of the passing game, even in a half-point PPR format like Yahoo. I think he's in for a big game and a fantastic running back option with your Cincinnati stacks. All right, let's get you that value tight end I promised in the open. We'll roll Ricky Seals-Jones of the football team. So no Logan Thomas, no problem here for Washington. 9 targets for Ricky Seals-Jones last week, so steps right into that role and is highly involved, running a ton of routes here for this team. Big time underdogs here are the football team. Kansas City, big 7-point favorites. Highest total we have on the week at almost 56. And the Chiefs have struggled with tight ends. Most receiving yards allowed to this position in the entire NFL. So Washington, we know. Terry McLaurin going to get the ball, Antonio Gibson, but Ricky Seals-Jones can really provide that 2nd, 3rd option in the passing game, really provide that option around the red zone. And I love this price at just $11. All right, it's time to take a look and my favorite play on Yahoo. But before we do that, we want to continue our Beast of the Week contest. This is a thank you to you guys for checking out the video, the likes, the shares, everything you guys do. Thank you. So all you have to do is guess fantasy points on Yahoo for my favorite play. The closest guess is going to win themselves a free Rotogrinders t-shirt. Now let's take a look. My favorite play for week 6 on Yahoo. You know, Mass, the Beast of the Week. All right, Beast time, and we saved you in a lot of spots. We're going to spend up at the wide receiver position all the way up to Tyreek Hill of the Chiefs, this week's Beast of the Week. Now, I get it, not practicing as of this recording, so we'll certainly keep an eye on that. I did not want to leave him out. My gut says he plays, but if he doesn't, we will have a replacement ready to go. There's pivots like Devontae Adams at the same price, or his teammate McCole Hardman becomes very interesting if he is unable to play here. But I think Hill gives it a go here, and this is a great spot to be in. In fact, maybe the best spot right now against this Washington secondary. This questionable tag is really going to help us. There's a lot of people that build lineups early. There's a lot of people that avoid guys that may be playing hurt. So we're really going to get a discount here than if he was just 100% healthy. And Washington, we mentioned the struggles, bottom 5 in all major categories against passing games and against wide receivers. Bottom 5 in receiving yards, receiving touchdowns, fantasy points. I could go on and on and on. If Tyreek Hill plays, love him. The ceiling as high as anybody. A smash spot here against Washington, making Tyreek Hill easily my favorite play of the week and this week's Beast of the Week. All right, guys, that'll wrap us up for our
What's up, everybody? You're tuned into Rotogrinders NFL Crunch Time, and it's 12:30. We already got some football in action here. The Dolphins and the Jaguars are winding down, and man, the NFL must really hate London because they keep giving them really great games. Anyway, really interesting stuff for this slate. Obviously, Kareem Hunt, Khalil Herbert. A lot of cash game questions I'm sure are going to be rolling in. I'm joined by Keith Eister and Dan Gaspar. What's going on, Keith? Who's filling in for Kristi, who took down some GPPs last week, by the way, and she pretty much walked through most of her tournament-winning lineup, and awesome stuff. Congrats to Kristi last week. So not that you have big shoes to fill today, Keith, but it's good to have you with us, man. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, no pressure. Congrats to Kristi. Great lineup by her. So we'll see if we can duplicate it this week.
Absolutely. And Keith will be joining me on the Showdown show tonight for Sunday Night Football as well. And of course, we have Mr. Tuttle. What's going on, man? How are you today?
Doing all right. Yeah, it's always a little weird with the London game going on. I've got that on the TV over here, but it's fun to grab a cup of coffee and sweat a little something before we do the show.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a couple of Jalen Waddle captain teams on Fanduel, just trying to get some sick leverage, but I didn't have any Matt Collins, so I'm probably out of luck there on the takedowns. Good old Matt Collins. A couple quick housekeeping things, some quick plugs, and then we'll get into some positional breakdowns and take your questions at the end here. BetMGM, get on over there and use promo code GRINDERSBET. Bet $10 to get $200 instantly when your team scores a touchdown. Yahoo capital G. That's Grinders 25 for a free $25 bonus on your first deposit. Of course, if you're not rolling with us at RG Premium right now, check it out. Really customizable packages, mix and match whatever you want. NBA starting up. We're pretty much here, baby. So we're in full swing with some MLB Showdown slate still going on. NBA is ramping up. NFL, obviously, we're right in the heart of the season. Hockey, obviously NASCAR. I mean, we're going crazy here. RG Premium got you covered. Everything you can need. Like and subscribe as well. And check out our daily fantasy football podcast feed. If you haven't been listening to some of our great audio content by now, definitely get on over there and check it out. So let's jump right into it. And Tuttle, I'll start with you and we'll talk about some quarterbacks. So what are you looking at the position here today? Give me some GPP and some cash plays here.
Yeah, so my take this whole week, and it hasn't really wavered, is that Patrick Mahomes is just going to absolutely smash. There's just no reason for them to run the ball in this spot. And I think he's just going to, I think he's going to go nuclear, which isn't some hot take or anything like that. Except it kind of is, because Lamar Jackson is the guy that I think is going to get the bulk of the ownership in cash games. I think he's going to be pretty easily the most popular option, both on DraftKings and Fanduel, as the go-to cash game options. Not that Mahomes is not going to be owned. We have him, I think, projected as the second highest owned guy in tournaments. But I think Mahomes is a better play than Jackson. And it's kind of one of those weird weeks where you can't necessarily take huge advantage of that in tournaments, because again, he's projected as the second highest owned player. But I do like the idea of taking a stance in cash games on Mahomes over Jackson, or taking a stance on him in the 3-man lobby if you want to do that. Again, you're not going to get an ownership discount in tournaments, but I think in cash games, it's going to be Lamar Jackson far and away the higher owned player. So that's kind of the take for cash games for me. Anything after that is, I think, fair game for tournaments. I mean, if you just sort by our ownership projections, which I'm doing right now, Lamar and Mahomes account for over 31% of projected own. With that in mind, it's just making sure you're pairing and stacking and correlating your lineups with the rest of the way. Of the guys that are going to be extremely low owned, I'll give one tournament take here. Dak Prescott. I can't quit this Dallas passing attack. It's obviously disappointed in a big way, just because the volume hasn't been there. Zeke and Pollard continue to smash. They have had no need to throw the ball. And I'm not saying there's going to be a need for them to throw the ball this week either. But I keep chasing it just in hopes that they run into a volume game, because if that happens, the Dak, CeeDee Lamb, and Amari Cooper stack is going to go off for sure.
Yeah, looking at that low ownership, egregiously low for Dak, and Jacoby Myers, pretty high floor guy. I mean, it's a way to kind of cross out some of that ownership if you want to do a little run back there. Yeah, Keith, I'll throw it over to you. Talk to me about the quarterback position today.
Yeah, I love that Dak take. I also have a bunch of Dak today. I really like Justin Herbert on the other side of Lamar. Tuttle mentioned Lamar going to be probably the most popular quarterback today. Herbert currently projected under 5%. So I just like playing the other side of that game and stacking him up. You can run it back then with one of Lamar guys so that you have a piece of him as well. So love Herbert as a tournament pivot. Matthew Stafford's another guy that I really like today against that weak Giants defense. Joe Burrow in the dome against just a putrid Detroit defense is a great play. If you're looking to save some money, Tyler Heineke, he's grabbing a little bit more ownership than I would like, but that KC defense has been dreadful as well. Casey's going to put up a massive amount of points here. I think Washington's going to have to catch up and should be throwing the ball at a much higher rate than typical.
Yeah, I'm with you. I actually have a single entry build here with Heineke, McLaurin, and Ricky Seals-Jones, and running it back with a KC pass catcher. And I'm trying to be about as different as I can. But I think, again, even for tournaments, probably not using Mahomes or Lamar might help me out there as well. So I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot of pass plays in that game, and the Chiefs are struggling defensively. I think that's real. We have enough data where some things are real and some things are not. And I think the Chiefs defense being bad is absolutely real. Let's get into the fun stuff. The running back position. We got nothing to talk about here, right? Obviously Kareem Hunt, it's been a while since we saw a running back garnering this much ownership on both sites, really. The most recent ownership projections that we have him coming in about 40%, which is a little lower than it was before the last run. I'm not sure when that was done. Maybe my guess is within the last hour and a half, but still 40% at the position. I mean, I know we're going to get, is Kareem Hunt a lock for cash games questions rolling in? My opinion is yes. I think there's too much risk there. The rest of the position, we do have a handful of other guys that are carrying a decent amount of ownership. Khalil Herbert, after Damian Williams had COVID, very friendly matchup against Green Bay. Darrell Henderson, obviously, when he's healthy, he's been the guy. They don't want to use Sony Michel whatsoever. Price getting up there a little bit on FanDuel, but I get it. Of course, Darrell Williams in that Kansas City game. I guess depending on what your Mahomes stance is and who's going to get the touchdown equity, you could play a factor into what running back you're going to take a look at here. And of course, Jonathan Taylor, who might have the best matchup on paper. Frank Reich just won't give him the workload he probably deserves. And we saw that in prime time last week against Baltimore. So without further ado, Tuttle, let me hear your thoughts about running back here.
Yeah, you touched on a lot of the important pieces. And we talked pre-show about like we're going to get good questions on Kareem Hunt. Yes, Kareem Hunt, excellent play him in cash. If you're fading him, obviously do it in tournaments. He's a tremendous play regardless of the format. But hey, it's football. Players get hurt. Things happen we don't expect. So once you get a player, no matter how well they project or how well they rate, that's going to be projected for 50% ownership. It's completely fine to not play that person in tournaments or fade him at least in a few lineups. So play him in cash. You can look elsewhere for sure in tournaments. A few other guys, Darrell Henderson, I think is an interesting cash game play as well. He's kind of the same story though. We have him projected, I think, at the second highest owned or third highest owned running back behind Khalil Herbert. The thing with Herbert is I do think he has a pretty low floor in this spot, but his price tag fits so many builds. I'm trying not to play him a whole lot, but the tag really just works quite easily with a lot of builds on DraftKings specifically. And then kind of the same thing with Darrell Williams on Fanduel. He's so cheap on Fanduel that I actually don't even like him as a play. I'm much more on Kansas City passing attack as a whole than Darrell Williams. And Williams will be involved a little bit as a pass catcher. But like his price tag on FanDuel is pretty tough to pass up in a lot of builds. A few other guys I want to mention, more of his tournament options. Joe Mixon is a guy. Samaje Perine is on the COVID list. Mixon, I think we're going to be back to the Mixon games where he's just handling every RB carry, every RB touch. I think he's got like a 25 touch potential outcome in this spot. And it's just a matter of what he does with those touches. And obviously it's a good matchup against Detroit. So I like him quite a bit for tournaments. And the other guy that I don't know how to feel about, but I feel like needs to be mentioned for tournaments, because any other week of Dalvin Cook at 7,700 on DraftKings would be just like an absolute smash, regardless of matchup. Obviously coming off injury, but I believe he was a full participant last practice, at least the last practice, if not the last couple. Looks like he's getting over that ankle injury. Historically, when he's healthy, they have not mixed Madison in at all, even though Madison's looked good. So Dalvin Cook, I think, is a pretty strong tournament option. And opposite of him, Hubbard is another strong tournament option too. Sneakily, they released Rodney Smith, who wasn't seeing a lot of work anyways, but he was getting in some passing down work. So Hubbard, I think, has kind of a sneaky touch floor as well. And he's going to be, I think, fairly overlooked on this slate.
Good stuff. Keith, what are your thoughts here?
Jonathan Taylor is the one that sets up as just a smash for me against a bad Houston team. Indy should be playing from ahead here. So love him. I think he can put up a ceiling game here. I love the Mixon call as well. I'm very interested in the Cincinnati-Detroit game. I'm not concerned about Mixon's injury. I think he looked fine last week. He should be even better after another week of rest, basically. And now no Perine. So love Mixon. And on the other side of that game, I don't generally like playing two running backs together, but DeAndre Swift is in play for me. He catches a ton of passes. So if we expect the Bengals to win this game, I don't mind bringing it back with Swift, even in the same lineup. Austin Eckler is another guy. He's really expensive, but we love that game environment. I'm paying up for Austin Eckler a little bit today as well. And then super cheap as a pivot off of like Herbert or Henderson, I don't mind J.D. McKissick, just another game environment spot. We expect them to be throwing the ball a ton. And McKissick is the guy that has gotten that role for Washington.
Yeah, and a good point about running it back with a running back in the modern day NFL. Some of the way with the committee, some of the way these backs are used are borderline not even running backs. I mean, Swift and Eckler see the volume some wide receiver twos or some wide receiver ones do in some low volume pass attacks here. So although it is typically a negative correlation, I guess there needs to be some context in who the running back actually is. So I think that's a great point there too. Let's move on to wide receiver. Just quickly, I know one guy we didn't mention is Antonio Gibson, who, man, the matchup is still really good. And you would just think that Washington will likely be trailing, but I I would just think he might have to be involved regardless, right? I don't know if I'm ready to give the reins to McKissick. He should get a lot of volume. It looks like he's coming in sub 10% on DK. So it's a little scary because we know McKissick is usually the passing down guy there, but Gibson is a guy to monitor too. If you're looking for some kind of low ownership in that game. Okay, wide receiver. Some typical household names at the top that we've been accustomed to seeing ownership-wise so far. I'm looking at DK. Our top 2 projected owned receivers are Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp, T. Higgins and Scary Terry. Not far behind there. So, Tuttle, looking at the wide receiver group today, what are your thoughts here for cash and tournaments?
Yeah, so it is a little bit of a weird week where wide receiver is a little bit of an afterthought. First few weeks of the season here, it's been, figure wide receiver out and then do running back second. And I think on DraftKings, a lot of builds are kind of centering in on a lot of the 5K options at wide receiver. So we have like a T. Higgins around there. We have Sterling Shepard. We got Brandon Cooks, Jacoby Myers, Michael Pittman, all fine cash game options. I think all those guys have fairly decent floors that you're looking for in cash games. Some of these guys don't have the most exciting ceilings. Like Jacoby Myers has yet to score a touchdown in his career. But like fine overall play. Kind of the same thing for Michael Pittman. Pittman's shown a little bit higher of a ceiling. But I think in general, spending up at least at 2 of the wide receiver positions is going to get you more of a unique build. I do think we'll see some builds where like Cooper Kupp or Devontae Adams is slot in is wide receiver 1. But paying for both of them in the same lineup, or paying up even for like a McLaurin or a DJ Moore in the same lineup, I think is going to be a little bit unique just because of how lineup construction is working, with people spending up at quarterback and kind of hitting that mid-tier and at running back. In terms of like tournament guys for me, I'm kind of sad that I attached my name to this guy at the beginning of the week. I touted him as my terrible take on the Swolecast. So I think I still have to tout him here. Rondale Moore. And the main reason why I wanted to mention him, or I mentioned him on the Swolecast, was this last week was the first week he ran more routes than Christian Kirk. And I think that got overlooked a little bit. I didn't see that being mentioned really anywhere else. So he is climbing into a little bit more steady of a role. He's had 3 carries last week, has that gadget role as well, and has some touchdown equity just because of that gadget role in the red zone as well. I don't think he's necessarily as good of a floor play as all the guys that I mentioned before in the same price range. But I do think he has some upside, even though the touches might not be there. And then there was one other guy that I wanted to mention. Opposite him, Odell Beckham. Another ugly name to attach yourself to. But I do think it's safe to say, or safe to assume, that the Browns in general are going to drop back to pass a little bit heavier of a pass rate. So overall, just volume for that passing game could be beneficial to guys like Odell Beckham.
That was going to be one of my questions to you guys at the end here. Were you inclined to take leverage with the pass game in Cleveland? Is there enough upside there? Of course, it doesn't feel good playing Baker Mayfield. Do you need to play the quarterback with a pass catcher for tournament? I see you shaking your head, Keith. Like, what did you do there for tournaments?
I mean, Odell Beckham has just looked. I mean, we're talking like 2 years at least where we just haven't seen much of a ceiling out of him. He might have 1 or 2 games in there, so it's difficult for me to get there. I don't have much Beckham, but I definitely think it makes sense as a leverage play. But I think Hunt is just the guy today.
Okay. Fair enough. Talk to me about receiver. Just to transition in, just my 2 quick thoughts are Jamar Chase got a price bump. I still think he's too cheap for the matchup and the volume he's seeing. So Darius Slayton is out. I mean, Kadarius Toney's going to play. Are you interested in Toney at all? Just something off the top of my head there. And then carry on as you were.
Yeah, I'm actually very interested in the Giants situation, both Toney and Shepard. Both of them. I mean, Toney got a big price bump. We currently have him projected right about 12% right now. But I think he's still in play at that price tag. A little bit of question about who's going to run in the slot, who's going to run outside. Definitely think whoever gets the slot snaps is the preferred target. But I sprinkled both of them just because we're a little bit unsure about that situation. Love the Chargers guys as well. Mentioned liking Herbert, so I'm obviously stacking them up. Keenan Allen at 6.4. He's still leading the team in targets. He just hasn't found the end zone very much. Love this game environment against Baltimore. I think Keenan Allen is a great play. And I have a little bit of Mike Williams as well. He has the Q tag all week. Unsure if he's going to play. The guy's been crushing this year. So we've definitely seen a ceiling out of him. I'm just going to assume that he's healthy and good to go if he's active. So I've got plenty of Mike Williams. Another kind of gross guy in the Odell Beckham mode, Robbie Anderson is a guy that I've been chasing for a couple of weeks. I'm going to try it one more time this week. Obviously, DJ Moore is a great play, has seen the majority of the targets. But Robbie Anderson, they gave this guy a big contract. I think they want to get him involved somehow. We just haven't seen it yet, but I think this could be the week for him.
Yeah, DJ Moore is sub 10% too. Obviously, didn't really have a ceiling game lately, but his role hasn't changed either. So I'm glad you brought up the Panthers pass game there. Tuttle, I'll throw it back to you. You got any worries about the weather in the Arizona Cleveland game? I'm just checking out Roth's write up, and I saw a couple questions in the chat as well, and they're good questions. You know, it's Kevin Roth said we're going to see near 20 miles per hour sustained wind gusts, with gusts around 30. Not as strong as some games last year, but he said he's staying away. So are you either of you worried about the weather and the passing attack between the Cardinals and the Browns today?
Looking to see, and we have seen I think the overall bigger concern there would be that we have seen the total drop a decent amount, which is usually a pretty good indication. The thing is, I'm still fine using players from this game, especially the guys like I was talking about, Rondell Moore, Kareem Hunt, Odell Beckham. All these guys are guys that can get short field touches and turn it into something bigger. So like I understand the concern 100%. Would it take me off Kareem Hunt in any stance? Not at all. If anything, it's just maybe shy away from spending too much money on like DeAndre Hopkins or something like that.
Okay. I think Keith agrees. And for time purposes, can we just jump into tight ends, Keith? Is that cool with you?
Yep. Tuttle nailed it.
All right. Perfect. Tight ends, Ricky Seals-Jones garnering a lot of ownership. Another name none of us thought we'd be talking about in the middle of the season. So here we are, Keith, tight ends, Ricky Seals-Jones, Travis Kelce. They're in the same game. That's fun. So what are you doing here, tight end?
Yeah, super interesting. I think they're both eligible, like cash viable. And I think on DraftKings this week, you can play both of them in the same cash lineup. I didn't quite get there just because I don't want to risk leaving out one of the three running backs that are going to be major owned, but I think it's definitely viable if you want to do that. I mean, I'm way over on Kelce. I just think that this is an eruption spot for him with Tyreek Hill a little bit banged up. Also love Mark Andrews. The Chargers look to kind of funnel to the middle of the field. So the outside receivers, Marquise Brown might have a little trouble. I think they work the middle of the field with Mark Andrews there. And then Dalton Schultz is another one I really like for tournaments. Just has had a massive role in Dallas. Talked about liking the Dallas passing game in that game environment a little bit. So Dalton Schultz is a nice low owned option there.
All right. Anything to add, Tuttle, to that tight end analysis?
Love Kelce. I think the only guy that'll add that I don't believe was mentioned was Hunter Henry, running a lot more routes than Jonnu Smith as of late. Not sure that it's 100% sure to continue this week, but if it does, I think he's probably underpriced for his role.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact number I saw, but Jonnu Smith ran less than 5 routes last week. I don't understand that. I don't know. Paid him a lot of money. I'm going to scroll up in the chat and try to find the first question here. But while I do that, I'll start with you, Keith. Will you talk to me about what's your favorite optimal-ish type of stack? And then maybe give me something off the wall you're interested in.
Kansas City is far and away my favorite optimal-ish type thing. They need to win really bad. So I don't see any circumstance where they take the pedal off the gas. They're just going to be, and then with CEH out too, we pretty much know it's coming through the air, or at least have a pretty good idea that it is. So I think, you just jam in as much Mahomes as you can fit. I love Kelce with him. Hardman was a guy that didn't get mentioned. Love that too as a pivot off of if Tyreek ends up missing a couple of series, maybe Hardman gets a few more snaps than he typically does. So Casey is definitely my go-to. And then I think Cincinnati, Detroit to get a little bit off the board. I like the Burrow stack and bringing it back with DeAndre Swift, like we talked about. I think Detroit's defense is really bad, and they're in a dome there. Maybe we see Joe Burrow get unleashed a little bit. I like Mixon as well in that game. So I have a ton of exposure to the Cincinnati side of that game, and then bringing it back with Swift and maybe even a little bit of Hawkinson.
Cool. Tuttle, favorite stack or two?
Yeah, KC, same thing. Favorite optimal-ish stack. And then for me, it would be the Dak that I mentioned before, Dallas and Dak. And I was talking a little bit with Jamino, the guy behind the ownership projections, earlier today too. And he's got a little bit of a thing for Nelson Aguilar, so you can't take it. You have to take it with a grain of salt. But the thing is, like, he is the perfect play with those types of stacks because it's like you're just looking for an extreme outlier, big play. And Aguilar is those guys with the double stack with Dallas, I think.
Cool. Like it. All right. We're going to try to get through as many of these questions as we can. Thanks for sticking with us. Start finalizing some of those lineups here, everybody. Okay. DK Cash. I'll start with you, Tuttle. Allen or Lamb?
Keenan.
Okay. Here's a fun one, Keith. Have a feeling first touchdown of the game is Diami Brown. Can you see it happening? I think anything's possible in that game, I think.
I can see it happening. I don't think it's very likely, but it could happen.
All right. Tuttle, DK Cash, Mahomes and Myers or Jackson and either Allen or Lamb?
For Cash, I just go Jackson and Allen.
Okay. Back to you, Keith. Ruggs, Hardman, or Mooney? Last piece for the Fanduel Millie.
So Hardman would be my favorite play. Depending on how much ownership you have throughout the rest of your lineup, I do like Mooney as a low-owned pivot. I know they haven't really unleashed Justin Fields yet, but I mean, theoretically, there's some upside there with Fields.
Agreed. 2 weeks ago, we had like half the air yard market share and like 40% of the targets or something like that. So I could see that too. We didn't talk about Austin Eckler much. Got an Eckler question mark here, Tuttle. How interested are you today in Eckler?
Fine play.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's see here. Is Hunt a still play? Is still a good play? Keith, I mean, pretty obviously he's a elite cash game play. And I don't know. What are you doing with him for tournaments, Keith?
So I'm a slightly over the weight on Hunt for the day. We talked about the weather a little bit in that game. The passing game just hasn't looked right for Cleveland. They're a team that has traditionally just always operated through the ground first. For that reason, I have quite a bit of Hunt today, even a little bit over the field.
Here's one specifically for Tuttle. Are we locking in TY today?
He's got the Houston matchup, right? Like that's historically been a thing. I am not doing that, but yeah.
Okay. We answered some win questions here. Are we still playing Kareem Hunt even though he's not feeling 100%? Yeah. How worried are you about the Kareem Hunt coach speak stuff, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, he said that he was going to get more run than usual, and that was the kind of the thing that made me feel okay about it. Obviously, they're not going to run him out there for 100% of snaps, but I mean, if he sees even into that like 70 to 80% of the touches range, I want a ton of them. So that's kind of where I have him projected at, and that's how I'm playing it.
Yeah, we had a Kareem Hunt or Henderson question for, I guess, just in general. So I guess Kareem Hunt or Henderson, I'm going to answer your question ahead of time. Hunt for cash. What about for tournaments? Are you okay with playing Henderson over Hunt, Tuttle?
I mean, I'm not avoiding Hunt from any sort of coach speak. If you have him projected as the best play, just play him. You're not getting an ownership discount off of Henderson either, really, from him, or like a huge, significant one. So,
okay,
just play Hunt.
Okay, 12:58, guys, start locking them in. Thoughts on Amari Cooper, Keith, real quick.
I mean, Tuttle's talked about loving the Dallas passing game. I mean, they have run a little bit more this year, but we've certainly seen a massive ceiling from these guys in the past. So I have a good amount of the Dallas passing attack in tournaments as well. I love them.
Okay, Tuttle, is a 3 running back lineup in DK Cash okay this week?
Completely fine.
Completely fine. Okay. DK Cash, Keith, Andrews, St. Brown, and Keenan Allen, or Ricky Seals Jones, Cooks, and McLaurin?
Second one.
Yep, second one. Okay. FanDuel Cooks or Keenan, Tuttle?
Keenan.
Okay. Steelers or Packers defense, Keith? Defense question.
Defense takes.
Including the Sunday night game, even.
Yeah, how about it?
Yeah, give me the
one.
Steelers against Geno Smith. I was like trying to think of who the Steelers were playing, but that's why I couldn't think of it. Yeah, Steelers for sure.
Here's one more good one for you, Tuttle. Lazard or Peoples Jones? Gun to head.
Peoples Jones, neither. I have no idea.
All right. FanDuel Cash, Booker Mixon or Herbert Henderson, Keith?
Herbert Henderson, definitely.
Cool. 12:59, guys. Wrap it up. We also got a Josh Gordon questions. Didn't play a ton of snaps. It might be a while. I don't have a ton of Josh Gordon, if any at all. That's just my take there. So tried to get through as much as that as we could, guys. Thanks for sticking with us. I know it was a long morning, a lot of great content here. 1 o'clock, we just locked it up. You know what? I had a funny DM. I was talking to someone about our podcast, and we were just BSing a little bit. So before we get out of here, the question was to me, and I'll ask you guys, do you have any like football or DFS kind of superstitions or anything like that? I know some people are like, I only check my scores app. I don't look at my lineup for a while or something like that. You do any of that stuff, Keith?
No, absolutely none. Just same routine, basically. Build the lineups with a cup of coffee in the morning, but yeah, no score checking or anything like that.
Tuttle, you got any superstitions or anything you do or don't do?
Well, you kind of described me. I usually just follow along and don't look at I don't open up DK very often. Just kind of follow along on ESPN or whatever app.
Gotcha. I know it seems funny, but whenever I'm like at work or not home and my 50% fade that I fade is like working out well. And then as soon as I get home and turn the game on, it's like, boom, 50-yard screen pass or something, right? It just seems like whenever I watch, it happens. But anyway, great stuff. We'll be back for Sunday night showdown tonight at Keith and I. So thanks for filling in this week, Keith. Appreciate it. And you got something about tonight's game?
Geno Smith, man, get excited. It's going to be a fun one to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. So for Tuttle and Keith and Steven filling in for Devin today, I'm Justin Carlucci. Good luck, everybody.